Hello and welcome to another episode of Video Game Logic. Today's episode was recorded on May the 28th, 2019. I'm your host, Game Psychologist, and with me, as always, laughing his head off.
Caffeine rage.
On today's show, we will of course be discussing the games that we played this past week. We'll be discussing the May Gameclub, which is Fault Milestone One. We'll be talking about our next 2 Gameclub games. We'll have a weekly community corner where we talk about Gameclub coming up for next week. Timestamps will be in the show notes following their respective topics. I've had a stroke. I'm just going to go now, and Rage can run the show tonight.
Are you trying to figure out why everything smells like burnt toast?
Yes. God, it took me... We're going to peek behind the curtain, dear listener. You'll get to hear the whole thing at some point in a Franken episode, but I just spent nearly 5 minutes forgetting how to do the show intro that I've done 150-something times at this point. I just forgot. I had to go listen to last week's episode to remember how to do the show intro.
Well, maybe you should go check your blood sugar because you also was opening Steam to try to get to voice chat.
I was really struggling opening Steam a bunch of times. I did check it, actually, when I got up to go help my son fix his clock. I was like, maybe but no, I'm good. I'm in the green.
Oh, so you're just having a dumb.
Yeah, I'm just having a dumb. My brain is probably fried. I had 13 sessions today, and, well, not everyone showed up, but I still had way too many counseling sessions today. And also, I had a spike of adrenaline. I am applying for the clinic director position. My old clinic director is leaving. Friday is her last day. And,
well, that's kind of sudden.
Well, I mean, I've known for a couple of weeks now. And I wasn't going to apply because I'm not licensed yet. But they were like, oh no, the way that we do our billing, you don't have to be licensed to be the clinic director. And I was like, oh, sweet. I'm applying for that position then. I'm the only person that's applied from within our office. Mm-hmm. And it's open first to people that are in the company. And then if no one is chosen from in the company, it will go outside to, the general population, hireable population. But I applied, so who knows? Maybe in a couple of weeks I'll be getting a big promotion. But I was very excited to apply. That'll give me access to a lot more resources and more money. I won't be seeing as many, maybe not any clients, which would kind of be sad, but also it'll give me some experience on a different side of the business, plus make it easier for me to get my license, because I'll be the one who's in charge of those resources for the clinic. So, that's a little self-serving, but they did promise me that I was going to get my license while I was there, so.
Yeah, right now you're on your learner's permit. You have to have somebody on the couch with you as you drive it around.
I did have to do that at one point, actually. I'm well past that, but I did used to have a supervisor in the room with me while I was doing therapy with people. It's very weird and awkward, but I've also now been the supervisor for someone, and it's kind of fun to be in that position. There were some clients that were, good clients that I would just, sit behind the person I was supervising and, make faces at the client. It was only slightly disruptive to therapy. Hello, Rach. Did I say that? I don't think I said that. Continuing my night of stroke. How are you?
I don't know anymore. I'm terribly confused.
Well, that makes 2 of us tonight, buddy. We'll just muddle through, which, granted, that's not too different from how we usually do it, but we won't be pretending tonight.
Are you sure that you're not melting another organ? Because I think you kind of need your brain.
I hope not. I don't have too many more of those to spare. Guess I could lose a kidney, or maybe a lung. Otherwise, I don't want to lose any of my other organs.
Well, then I would suggest not doing that.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Games.
I'm sorry. I just the visual novel database has at the very bottom of it a random quote from a game, and I need to read mine because it says, I'm going to masturbate, so can you please get out?
Oh my god. I mean, if you insist, I mean, I don't mind to stick around and watch or maybe help, but if you really want some privacy, I'll give you that.
What does yours say? It's at the very bottom.
All the way to the bottom of the page. Wow! Just duel me, I said. Does it change if I refresh the page?
Yes, it does. Miko, don't let that dick escape. Oh, and also, if you click it, it takes you to the visual novel that it's from.
It's like she's thinking that my reasoning is broken, and I will transform myself into a criminal if I don't have anything to masturbate to by midnight. All right. Yes, I agree. I need to masturbate by midnight. Clock's ticking, Rach. Let's get going.
Oh, like that would stop you.
No, that's true. That's true. Nothing would stop me from masturbating if I really wanted to. Except maybe the police.
Yeah, but then they'll, then you'll just ask them, can I at least finish first?
It's the wrong podcast for me to tell sex stories. Another time.
Oh, well, should we get on to a different story then?
Let us do that. So, games that we played this week, I've got 2, you've got 1. Do you want me to sandwich you, or do you want to do your 1 and then I'll do my 2?
I'm not falling for that one again.
Okay.
Let me just get my anger out.
Okay.
So I got into the beta for Mario Kart Tour, which is the mobile version of Mario Kart. It's the new Mario Kart game that's coming out free to play. So, my expectations were low. So once I got into it and started poking around, I started getting that feeling. That feeling whenever you're out for a walk, which I know, it's already getting there, right? Out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah. I'll go to the gym and run on the treadmill, but fuck going outside for a walk.
Especially in this heat. It was 90 some today. But, you're out for a walk and you step in a fresh dog turd. That's the feeling I had when I opened up Mario Kart. Because the first thing they have you do is roll the gacha machine to get your first character. This is a gacha-based kart game. And all the racers have various attributes. And, of course, the rarer the racer, the stronger they are. And on various tracks, they have various strengths and weaknesses. So, and the rare of it's not just racers, I might add. It's racers, gliders, because they use the modern Mario Kart method where you're occasionally gliding along. And the karts themselves. All of them have various strengths on various tracks. Some of them are stronger on certain tracks, and some of them are much stronger on certain tracks. And the rarer the kart, glider, or racer, the more tracks that they're either slightly more stronger or a lot stronger on. So you could already see, oh shit, this is pay to win out the wazoo, huh?
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, well, let me tell you what the various things do, okay? So there's, like I said, there's 3 different things that you can pull out of the gacha, and it's, for now, just one pipe, and that's what they call it, pulling things out of the pipe. Personally, I think they're pulling it out of something else, but you have the racers that whenever they hit an item block, if a racer is, let's just call it attuned to that track, either there's essentially no bonuses, a slight bonus, or a major bonus. No bonuses, you get 1 item. Pretty much standard on Mario Kart. You're slightly attuned, you get 2 items. If that's a track that character's strong on, fully attuned, which they don't use the term attuned, but yeah, right. they get 3 items, and they unlock the ability to go on to Frenzy mode, which essentially gives you a speed boost, gives you the star power, and then whatever item you hit 3 of, essentially the slot machine, you're able to fire off as much as you want for a short period of time. So if you get like the blue shell, pretty much everybody's screwed. Not that anyone would know, because this is a single player experience with leaderboards, and I'm not sure if the AI is tied to a ghost time, or if it's just the AI just, copying a name and that's it. But it's all AI, which leads to some real frustration, because what's the AI in Mario Kart do?
What do they do?
Yes.
They have rubber banding mechanics, and
Out
they
the
catch
wazoo.
up to you really fast.
Well, you just repeated yourself, but they have rubber banding like crazy, and they play a little game called Let's Screw Over the Player.
Yes, because the farther back you are in Mario Kart, the more likely you are to get more powerful items.
Well, not just that, but they outright aim at the player. And also, they have some really, really good aim. I mean, impossibly good aim. Especially for firing behind them. Which, that's something else that drives me crazy about this game. And this is a non-sequitur. We'll go on to this, and we'll go back to what the gotcha mechanics do. So, the game is played... Well, you play a racing game, you would expect it to be in portrait or in landscape mode, right? It's played in portrait mode. You can't see a damn thing. Especially on a tight turn, or a turn that's banked, which it's a good thing the Mario Kart series is, pretty well known for very twisty tracks, right?
Yeah.
But don't worry, because it's one-touch controls. The kart is pretty much... It's essentially a kart game mixed with the Endless Runner.
Okay.
You don't control the acceleration at all. Only thing you do is you control the steering, and there's invisible walls like crazy. So some of the shortcuts that were in previous Mario Kart games, which the game copies a lot from previous games on its track list. Mostly from the DS era and the GameCube era. But with some going all as far back as SNES and N64, but not many. Some of the tracks that require you to do a certain acceleration to hit a shortcut, only way you're doing that is with a mushroom now. And also, drifting can be a real pain, because there is a manual drift mode, but I just wasn't able to do it that well. And because there's invisible walls over the place, and because you have essentially just a very narrow slice of view, if there's a turn that, let's say there's, I'm blanking on the track names, unfortunately, but there's one track that the shortcut is essentially you go around an S-turn, and there's a ramp that is like right before, right in the middle of the S-turn. And before and after is invisible walls, so you have to turn pretty much perfectly. But because you're passing it, you can't see when to turn, so it's a complete guess. And you can't even slow down because... And it uses the track on the N64 game that has the train on it. You want
the desert one, like the Wild West one?
Yeah, the desert one. So if you're trying to... Oh, the train is coming, but if I just slow down a little bit, I won't hit it. So I could not, have to do that while just fly up in the air for a bit. Can't do that. It's just befuddling, some of the design in this, particularly that. But let me get back onto the gacha mechanics.
Okay.
So you have the racers that dictate the number of items that you get per item block. And there's also the chance that whenever you pull an item block, you just get a coin, which is added to your overall currency, assuming you don't lose it by getting hit, which let's assume that you are, because you are. The cart is a flat-out speed boost. And also, as you level up these things, by getting multiples of them, which some of them are, good luck getting multiples of because, it's like a 0.5% chance. You get stronger bonuses. You get point bonuses, which I'll get into the points in a little bit. But eventually it becomes a even stronger boost. So you can see where the grind and the pay-to-win mechanics are really coming into play now, huh?
Yeah.
The glider, though, is the most atrocious of the bonuses. So you think getting a speed boost is bad? The glider, if you have a fully attuned glider for a track, it takes away most of the random chance of the item blocks. So if you're in the lead, you'll only get items that are useful to you. If you're way behind, you'll get a very, very strong possibility of blue shells, of bullet bill power-ups, of the super mushroom where you just grow really big and just drive over everyone. It's just crazy. Oh, and each of the gliders has their special power-up that also affects the roll chance. So, like a particular glider may have a chance to increase the chance of getting mushrooms, while another one may increase the chance of getting shells and that sort of thing. And if that glider is attuned to that track even slightly, you start the race with one. And
start
of course,
the race with a glider.
No. You start a race with the item.
Oh, okay.
Which the AI or the players in massive sarcasm quotes usually are at least slightly attuned, and sometimes have the trifecta. The player or the character, the cart, and the glider. Which good luck catching them. So there's been many times that I'll start a race and then I'll just have a half a dozen ink blots on my screen from various power-ups being used on me, or just get blown up 2 or 3 times. It is infuriating, to say the least. And it completely takes away from the rocket start, which takes away points. Which let's get into points. So, and let's say every other Mario Kart game, how do you progress through the cups?
You beat the previous campaign or previous tournament, and you unlock the next one, and then also by doing that, you unlock the faster CC classes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll get into the CC classes in a little bit, but in this, you pretty much have to win by points, right?
Yeah.
Over the course of the tournament. In this, instead, progression is tied to stars, all right? Each of the each cup is 4 races. One of them is a challenge mode, which could vary on different things. Sometimes it's a gliding challenge to get a certain distance. Sometimes it's just a hot lap, be a certain time trial. Sometimes it's a head-to-head one-on-one race. So there's a nice variety there, and that's always just 3 stars if you complete it with beating a certain condition, getting a certain distance, or beating by a certain amount of time, that sort of thing. The races themselves each have 6 stars. And to progress, you need every of the stars except for like 2 or 3. All right? And it's tied to a point total, which is accumulated by doing actions in a race. And your starting character, glider, and cart combo, as well as the CC class you are running as a multiplier. So in this Mario Kart game, it actually pays off to lose and to hang back and just constantly spam powerful items because they give you a lot of points, and also hitting other racers gives a lot of points. It's a paradox. Am I the only one that's seeing this? Is it weird?
That does sound weird.
And the plateaus for each of the stars, it just gets ridiculous. To the point that in order to hit the 6-star total, you essentially have to grind out, because as you gain experience on the car, the racer, and the cart, their starting points goes up, as well as the CC class. So the more often that you get in the top 3, that slowly ticks up as a bigger starting bonus, as well as a little bit of a multiplier, until it hits a cap. So there's this weird, okay, well, you have no chance of getting 6 stars. You're going to have to go work on the challenges. What the challenges could be obnoxious. Hit 200 green shells while using a character that has that wears a shell. Well, good luck if you haven't done the gacha enough, right? Or some are easier than that, just like win 10 times or something. But it has a bingo mechanic where if you get 3 in a row, you get a bonus, and also if you get the entire thing, you get gems, which is the premium currency, which, might I add, is the only way to get pulls on the gacha machine. They give them to you occasionally for level ups on your overall account. Essentially, as you gain stars, you gain experience for your account that levels up, and you get 5 gems like every other level until later on. And also the leaderboard, if you do well on that, you'll get gems. So there is way to progress, but it is so agonizingly slow. Each pull of the gacha is 5 gems, with a 10x being 45. So you get the 10th one free. Woo. But they disabled the microtransactions, so they're being nice about that. But they just exposed just how obnoxiously slow everything is to get. Which is, this is a racing game that has so many damn roadblocks on it. I mean, even to unlock the next cup, it's, first it's, it's 5 seconds. That's not bad. Then it's a minute. Oh, then it's 5 minutes. I've seen people talking about how the later cups that you get are 24 hours.
That's a long time.
Yes, it's a day.
To play Mario Kart. So I said Mario Kart.
Yeah, I heard part.
Pretty sure I said Kart, but honestly, I might have said part. I'm having a stroke tonight, so.
Well, you do have to masturbate before midnight.
I do indeed.
But yeah, there's just so much here that angers me. That's not to say that I didn't have fun occasionally, but for every moment that was kind of fun, it was like, oh, well, I'm out of hearts, so that's the stamina mechanic. I have to wait for that to regenerate, which you could only have 5 hearts at a time. Or you could regenerate to 5 hearts. If you get lucky, you'll actually get more than that on level ups. But, that's a roadblock. The unlocks are a roadblock. Getting good pulls on the gacha is another roadblock. There's just so many roadblocks here. It just boggles the mind.
Yeah.
And plus, the whole playing in portrait mode is off-putting to me. You steer with it's a one-touch mechanic. So, essentially, you hold and swipe left or right to turn. And then you flick up or down to use a power-up. And that's it. That's all the controls there is. So, it's a very watered-down game.
That sounds kind of familiar to how the game plays if you turn on, like, the... it's not just like the kid mode, but like the super easy mode. Yeah, where it does most of the driving and stuff for you. And then you just kind of lazily steer left or right and press the button to use power-ups.
Yeah, I mean, this is about on par with that. Which, it's a shame because the fact that they're pulling from the archives, essentially, for a lot of the content, can be viewed as lazy, and I do view it as that as well, but also the fact that, this could be a Mario Kart game that has all the legacy content in it, plus new stuff, eventually. But, there's just so much grind there, and so that's just irritating, because that's the thing, is that Mario Kart has a degree of randomness to it already. So, losing out on precious stamina because the AI decided to take you over. There was once I got hit by 3 blue shells in a row.
Yeah, that's not cool. That doesn't... I wouldn't say that never happens in, the console.
No, this was from the same racer. He had a frenzy going on. And that's the other thing, is that it feels like it's built around essentially just gathering as many characters as you can and only play them if they are essentially attuned to the racetrack. So you don't really have a main anymore. Like, I think my first character was Toad, which is a character I don't like playing, but because he does have stats on this outside of his bonus that I can't recall what Toad's is. But a slight point bonus, but that's it. It strips them from all the strategy of picking a racer as well. It takes away all the character from them, ironically enough. Trying to think of what else. There was a fun mini game that you eventually get tickets for, or you can just pay to play. With premium currency, of course. Where you're Golden Mario going around Rainbow Road, collecting coins as a bonus to get extra of the non-paid currency. But the non-paid currency almost feels like a joke because the only time that really comes into play is in the shop to buy something upright. So every day you have 6 items that rotate in on. It's not a 24-hour timer, but it's like a 20-hour timer or something like that. And it's usually a cart, a glider, and then 3 consumables and something else. I never saw a racer in there. I'm not sure if it's possible or if I just have bad luck for it, but the things that could show up there are bonus levels for the carts. So if you have it where you have a race that you're trying to get, but your cart is too low, you could buy a ticket for it to essentially boost its level, to get the starting points up, to make it a little bit easier to be able to actually finish the race and get a decent amount of points to get the point plateau. Which, that's, like I said, that's what really got me, was that there's so much artificial lengthening in this game that it just got frustrating that, oh, well, I finished all the races, I won them all, but I didn't win them enough, or I didn't get enough points in them. So I either have to go rerun those or see if there's a challenge I could do that will get me enough stars, because the challenges also give stars, thankfully, otherwise I wouldn't have progressed. And some of the point plateaus are just absurd, like 7,000 or 8,000 points when I was getting 4,000 and winning the race with it. So it feels like it's one of those things that you come back much, much later when you're high level and just annihilate. Well, annihilate as much as Mario Kart will let you, though.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else was there? I did like that they kind of shook things up on the final level of all the challenge modes. I should say with all the challenge modes. That was a good choice, I feel like, but at the same time, that doesn't even give you the full 6 stars, so it doesn't give you extra breathing room. I think every level was I want to say you have to get 20 stars or something like that. It didn't give you a lot of breathing room. And I saw people complaining about plateauing in a cup or two after, where I just gave up on the game. Which I could definitely see, that happening, because, I was starting to hit it already. But then again, I don't have the patience for this bullshit. I actually stuck with it much longer than I would have usually, because, I wanted to see how far it would go and also have, content for the podcast.
Right. It does not sound good.
Yeah.
I'm sure because it's Mario Kart and Nintendo made it, it'll make $1 gajillion and everyone will love it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it seems like they're leaning more and more on the microtransaction model, because Mario Infinite Runner, or Mario Run it was, didn't sell as well, but and also was a $10 Infinite Runner game. So, you could kind of see the problem there, right?
Yeah. Couldn't you play a certain amount of it for free, though?
Yeah, a little bit. Which I think kind of hurt them in the long run, because they saw that it was, not a $10 game, right?
Yeah. I would think that.
So, yeah, I think that's why they've gone more and more on the mobile-esque microtransactions. I mean, this has pretty much everything they can think of. It has timers, it has stamina, it has multiple currencies, it has loot boxes. Well, gotcha mechanics, but it's a loot box by any other name, right?
Yeah.
Massive pay to win. Absolute frustration. But then again, that's Mario Kart for you. Oh, it's just, I wasn't having a lot of hope for this because, it is a mobile game. But even though I tempered my expectations, oh boy, did they come under them. I still think that we need to, look into a flight to Japan, because I think we need to schedule intervention at this point. Nintendo, we kind of like you, but you need to stop. You're hurting yourself.
And you're hurting us.
Well, until I uninstalled the game. Then I felt a lot better.
Fair. That's fair.
So, any other questions?
I don't think so. I mean,
you saw me rant about it for a bit. When I, was just starting to play because, like I said, I opened it up and it immediately throws you into a gacha game. That's not a good sign, especially for a racing game. Because, they have to make those ultra rares be very tempting. They have to give a reason for it. The fact that they put coins in the item blocks, though, is just annoying.
Well, the coins are already in the item blocks in Mario Kart on the consoles, and the coins are used... What do the coins do? Oh, they raise your score. Like, there's like this score that you have in more modern Mario Kart games that is like, you unlock stuff overall, so maybe they're more like points that you go into, and you can collect 10 per
like
race.
Experience points?
Yeah, you can collect up to 10 per race, and they get banked and go towards unlocking stuff. So, like different carts, and I mean, it's all, just cosmetic. Well, no, some of the different carts have different stats, but it's not like one of them is clearly better than the other one. They just suit different play styles. But there is a lot of cosmetic stuff you can unlock. But anyways, you can bank up to 10 points.
Well, that's the thing, is
race.
that none of this is technically cosmetic because, you may, in the Luigi Cup, one race may be attuned to Luigi. So, if you have Luigi, you're at a strong advantage. Plus, whatever cart is paired with them. So, like the one that has the vacuum cleaner on it and, the glider that goes with that. Well, you're good to go then. But the next cup, it may not be attuned to Luigi, and Luigi may be a terrible character for it. So if you haven't done more pulls in the gacha machine, you're going to have a lot harder time. And Mario Kart has this kind of bell curve where if you're way behind, you have a good chance of catching up. And if you're way ahead, you're, I guess bell curve isn't the proper term, but you're going to be kind of screwed unless, you get lucky. But then if you're in the middle, you are so screwed. Because you get crossfire from people behind you and people ahead of you. And the AI loves to go after the player. I think that's also a real disappointment, is that there's no multiplayer or no multiplayer minigames at all. I mean, that feels like a really weird mission,
Yeah. I mean, Mario Kart in recent iterations, the online multiplayer has been lackluster. It's always been more focused on couch split screen. But, I mean, you still could just go online and look for matches, and a couple iterations ago, it was you had to, have someone's Nintendo number or whatever to find them. And then, in more recent years, they just had, matchmaking. You could quick join a race. Or, you could look for specific races, but it was always easier just to quick join. So, not having multiplayer on mobile seems like an oversight or a mistake.
From the sounds of it, from people that picked apart the package file, it doesn't even have a framework for multiplayer. It just has everything local with the bots, downloading a list of names, it sounds like. So it doesn't even sound like, the player that just beat you, that's not even a ghost time of theirs, or, the AI trying to match it because, The AI, if they had just had a ghost, wouldn't be able to match it unless they did a lot of fudging, which, yeah, Mario Kart AI cheating? Nah, never, right?
Yeah, they would never do that. They've always designed excellent, intelligent AI.
And fair. Don't forget fair.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, but I think this is a hard pass unless they do a lot of reworking, which honestly I don't see them doing it because, it's a mobile game.
Woo.
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 Woohoo!
Alrighty. Is that all of your... Do you feel cleansed? Do you feel free?
A little bit, but I kind of still want to schedule that intervention. Fair
enough. Well...
You'll just slap the Kool-Aid, the microtransaction Kool-Aid out of... and now I'm blanking on the president of Nintendo's name now. Because they just changed recently. But smack it out of his hand. It's like, no. No.
Well, let's see. I mean, Bowser is the Nintendo America president.
Yeah, which is hilarious. We should just rename the CEO to Peach.
Tatsumi Kimishima? I apologize for horribly mispronouncing your name.
That's one other thing. I realize beta is beta, but I did have a little bit of stutter on some tracks, which I think it's fair to say I shouldn't.
Yeah, you've got a very high-end phone, one of the highest ends of phones.
I mean, it was one of those momentary things, but I'm also running the latest version of Android, so they may not be running for that, or gunning for that.
You mean they'd be targeting iOS more? Or, because, I mean, if they were going for budget
I would say
Android phones.
That's the thing, is that I didn't see people complaining that much about performance unless they were on very low-end phones. So that's why I'm thinking that they just weren't utilizing Android Pie as well. Which I have run into before, is that, there's just something about Pie, which, outside of just being delicious, there's something going on in the background that sometimes makes games run a little funky or just crash. Like Oxenfree just doesn't work at all, which is annoying.
Gotcha. Do you use the Samsung game launcher? Because you can...
No.
There are a very few amount of settings that you can customize in there for like game performance.
No, let's just put it this way. First thing I did was I turned off the One UI, the Samsung thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a Nova Launcher.
Gotcha.
Mostly because I prefer Nova Launcher. And it's, I'm an old man. I go back to what I'm comfortable with.
Makes sense.
You know what I'm not comfortable with? You kids be on my fucking lawn.
Fair enough. Okie dokie.
And I'm also not comfortable with the amount of microtransactions in Mario Kart Tour.
That is also a fair point that I would agree with, even though I haven't played it. It sounds like it's quite bad. Or quite normal by mobile standards, which is quite bad.
I mean, I showed you some of the stuff.
Yeah, you sent me some screenshots.
So, your game, which you stole from me.
Indeed. So I'm going to talk about Guild of Dungeoneering, although I played it on mobile. So I left the Steam link from last time and then added the Google Play Store link.
Yeah, it is charming, isn't it?
Yeah, so overall thoughts to, basically pretty much everything that you said from last week. If you want to know more about the game's sort of ins and outs, you can go listen to last week's podcasts where Rage talks about it. Generally, I agree with your thoughts about the game. I love the soundtrack, the narrator, bard, limerick style stuff. Where
especially especially when you unlock a new class. That's hilarious.
Yeah, those are amazing. And also the little story path progression points.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like building certain buildings. And then I haven't won or lost enough times, I guess, to hear an end of a dungeon repeated, or if I have, I don't remember it. So this is kind of where I think a major point of gameplay or getting maybe frustrated about that stuff is different playing it on mobile. So I'll sit down and I'll do 2 or 3 at a time, play it on my phone. That's 15, 20 minutes, give or take. And then I'm done. And then I'll come back to it later. Just it's on my phone. I'll pull my phone out of my pocket while I'm sitting at work, or this weekend while I was like watching movies on the couch with my kid, or lounging about. It's like, I don't really want to do this. I want to play some games. I'll play Guild of Dungeoneering for a little bit. Play it for 30 minutes or so, and then be done, and then come back to it later. So maybe I have heard the same ones for winning or losing the dungeon, but I didn't notice as much because I was playing it in much shorter chunks. And you didn't say this, but I would assume you sat down, since you were playing on your computer, and you played it for a while.
Yeah, a couple hours.
Yeah. So in those chunks, I think that holds up a lot better.
Yeah,
and
which
so
is
do
what
the
I said.
songs.
Yeah, it feels like it's more of a mobile, not focused, because that's the wrong term. It doesn't feel like they completely put it on PC as an afterthought, but there's some certain design elements, especially they have click and drag for some mechanics.
Yeah. So the game plays extremely well on mobile. I mean, I don't know if they designed it for mobile and then put it on PC, or they wanted to put it on mobile but went for a PC launch first. Like, I don't know when it launched where. And obviously I didn't design the game, so I don't know what the original intent was.
At least with that attitude.
But it plays perfectly on mobile. I mean, it's, the click and drag for placing things on the map is, well suited to it. It's not complex. Everything's a big square, so there's not really any mistakes to be made with like, oops, I dropped it over here when it should be, one space to the left. I mean, everything's a big tile or big grid, easy to, put stuff where you want it. Everything's easy to navigate, dragging certain things around, like when you get to choose treasure or pick the card you want to use when you're fighting a monster. It's double tap for that stuff. So I've never accidentally used a card I didn't mean to. You have to very deliberately double tap the card that you want to use, and if you do it too fast, nothing happens. You have to tap, wait, and then tap. So I suppose that could get frustrating if you want to play it for long periods of time and you're just like, I just want to go. I want to go. But it prevents me from...
fast.
Huh?
Gotta go fast.
Gotta go fast. But I mean, it prevents me from making mistakes. I haven't made any accidental, card usage or drops or anything that I didn't intend to. It's very cutesy. My kid likes to sit and play it, and he also likes the songs. Like, I mean, he doesn't play it by himself. He plays it with me. But, because everything's all cutesy, he's like,
even when it's horrible murder.
Yeah, even when it's a horrible murder. I'm like, this is like a giant spider, but it looks like kind of a little puffball on the screen. He's like, oh, it's a cute little spider. But he's a bad guy. It's like, yeah, he's a bad guy. We gotta fight him. And it's like, in my head, I'm thinking, that's probably like a giant sort of Skyrim-esque, like, spider monster.
Only it's in a better game.
I disagree, but to each their own. It
depends on how many mods you have.
Yeah, make Skyrim like Guild of Dungeoneering. But, it's a great game. I love it. It was like $5, I think, on the Play Store. And it's very well worth that. It comes with all of the DLC, which I don't know what I'm playing that is or is not potentially DLC.
That's the thing, is that the DLC, some of the features are integrated, like the favor mechanic is from one of the DLCs.
Okay.
And also, some of the card drops that you slowly unlock by just building up the guild and getting different crafting areas. I believe some of those are also from the DLCs. So it's pretty seamlessly integrated. But there's also like an ice cream cavern that you can go to fairly quickly. That's obviously from the Ice Cream Headaches DLC.
Yeah, I just got the ice cream cavern thing that popped up. He's like, oh, I want to get my ice cream. And so
I scream, you scream. We all scream.
For ice cream. But yeah, I love the design of all of the characters in this game. They're kind of cutesy and fun, but also like they hint at horribleness. I like how they're sort of inventive with a different character or the different Dungeoneers, like the Chump. And how he starts with like a whole bunch of garbage stuff, and he gets some which I don't remember if you said what those were or not before. But those are basically useless cards.
Well, I talked about the stupidity mechanic, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
Some items may be a stat upgrade, but they also put stupidity into your deck, which is the card.
Yeah.
And there's no real benefit of having cards like that, unlike some of the other card games I played recently.
Yeah. I try to minimize having garbage cards. Sometimes if I get something that's like +2 to health and gives you one card, and I don't have any other cards in my deck, I might take it. But I'll usually pick better cards over just a straight stat boost if it gives me.
I tried to balance out a little bit. It really depended on the item that you got, and also it really also depends on just your build. You know, do you even have an item in that slot? If so, then maybe I'd be more willing to take a card.
Yeah. Is there a particular Dungeoneer that you find yourself using? Because I almost exclusively use the Bruiser.
It really depended on the mechanics, because some are more suited to fighting magic-based characters because of how the damage system worked. I found the Apprentice worked pretty well whenever I had a lot of mana-based fights. The Ranger actually did somewhat well.
Yeah, I don't have the Ranger yet. That's the next one I'm going for.
Yeah, once you get to the tier 2 stuff, they start really ramping up in power. But they also start, I think, a little bit stronger as well. It doesn't feel like they're a complete replacement to the previous tier, because there's the regeneration mechanic where if you lose a character, which sometimes you actually want to, and you've encountered that, I bet, right?
Yeah, because they'll get really bad. What was the one that I just had? I mean, my Bruiser died, so it was okay. Like, I didn't kill him on purpose, but Gullible. So every loot drop, there was one item that would be of a lower level than what the loot drop was supposed to be. So it reduced my chances of getting good loot.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is that
I have that trait.
And it feels like I'm highlighting all the uhs now. Some of the traits that were negatives actually turn into a overall positive after a bit.
Yeah, I noticed they have levels to them.
Let's
I've
see.
only had Dungeoneers last. I think I had one Bruiser that lasted for 3 dungeons, and then he died. Otherwise, no one lasts more than 1 or 2.
I think I had one that lasted 4, but let's see, oh no, there were scars, weren't they? Battle scars. Okay, here we go. So, the Gullible. Okay, so stage 1 loot choice is of lower level than normal. But Gullible stage 2, in addition to the early stage, +1 to all gold generated from treasure. So it kind of balances out.
So that's useful.
Punch Drunk. +1 stupidity, so you gain a card. But Punch Drunk to level 2, you get another level of stupidity, but all cards now block 1 damage of any type.
No, that's nice. That's not too bad.
Let's see, even the ones that start off positive kind of counterbalance themselves. So let's see. Hulking, early stage +1 health. Final stage, another +1 health, +1 to stupidity, which that goes into your base deck. Let's see. Fountain Addict. The hero is drawn towards fountains, and the first tile card each turn always has a fountain. Final stage. In addition to the early stage, the hero becomes immune to the negative effects. So that's actually a really good one.
Yeah. But anyways, I really enjoyed it, and I feel like it's a perfect mobile game.
No, it's
But yeah, it's maybe the best game I've ever played on mobile.
Wow, really?
It perfectly is. It's just so perfectly suited for mobile devices. It's fun. It's got a great soundtrack. It's a real game that doesn't have bullshit microtransactions and stuff in it. You pay a real sum of money and you get a game. That's the fact that it's all card based and tile based and not finicky lends itself really well to a touch screen. It might be the best mobile game I've ever played. I'd have to really think about that to be sure, because I have played a lot of mobile games, but most of the time a mobile game is something I play that's just trash to eat up some time between something else that I'm doing. You know, I'm out and about waiting at a doctor's office, or waiting on Katie to do something while we're grocery shopping, or I've got 10 minutes at work, and that's not enough time to boot up a game on my computer, but I don't really want to do or don't have any paperwork at the moment. That's a lie. I don't want to do any paperwork at the moment. But I find myself wanting to sit down and just play this. And there's maybe 2 or 3 mobile games I've ever played out of all of the potentially hundreds that I've tried that I actually just want to sit down and play. And not do anything else. I just want to play it. And I can kick back on the couch or in my comfy recliner and play it. I was going to go to bed last night. And I sat down in my recliner in my office and I went, I could play a couple of runs in Guild of Dungeoneering. And I sat there for 45 minutes and played Guild of Dungeoneering instead of going to bed. And it was lovely. I kind of want to play it like right now. I'm not going to. I could play it while we record. I'd be distracted. I'm not going to. But I'm talking about it makes me want to play it right now. I'll probably play a couple of rounds before I go to bed tonight. I guess depending on how early we get done or how late we get done. But yeah, it might very well be the best mobile game I've ever played, and it's definitely in the top 3.
Which, that's pretty high praise, because you've played a lot more mobile games than me over the years.
Yeah.
I'm more of a more recent convert to mobile. Or picking up mobile.
Yeah. And I've played lots of games that have been, made to mobile devices, like Knights of the Old Republic, or BioShock, or, a half a dozen other games that they've made mobile ports for that are garbage because they're not designed with that in mind. And then I've played lots of games that take concepts that would work well on mobile, and they play well, but they're full of mobile game bullshit. But this is just a good game. Kart. Yeah, but this is just a good game that either it's designed by default or was designed with mobile in mind and takes advantage of mobile games' features. Or the features inherent to mobile gaming. However you want to look at that. The technology, maybe.
Yeah, and the fact that each dungeon run is sub 5 minutes. Or probably not sub 5 minutes. I would say about 5 minutes, actually.
They're pretty short, between 5 and 10 minutes. Some of them I've purposely drawn out to either collect extra loot or boost my character stats and levels to fight the dungeon boss or whatever.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that unless you're getting good cards, it can take a bit to level up, because you only gain levels if you're fighting something of your level or higher.
Yeah.
So if you keep drawing cards that are lower level, then you're just going to be farming some gold, essentially, which isn't bad, because you do need that to level up the guild, and the guild gets rather expensive after a while.
Yeah.
But
everything on the first level is...
but even failure, does give you a little bit of progression.
Yeah. So, I like it. I like it a lot. The other game that I played this week was Train Valley 2, which I talked about a couple of weeks ago. I only played maybe the first dozen levels. The farther you get into the game, there's some very differing mechanics that both make the game more interesting. In some cases, a little more fast-paced. In other cases, it makes it way more puzzly. So, the first I don't know, 10, 15 levels are really easy, introducing you to the different mechanics. You get some complexities, tunnels, bridges, having to loop tracks back around, that sort of thing. Pretty simple, easy stuff to navigate. And then it starts introducing the concept of having multiple layers of your industry. So, you take people to refine the base, or to harvest the base resource, wood. Then you take the wood to the shop and also workers to make wooden planks, and then you take those wooden planks and some workers and something else, maybe like cloth, which you have also had to go up a couple of resources for to make chairs, and then the chairs are one in the city. Like, you get yourself up to that. Then it introduces power as a mechanic, where you have to fuel a power station in order to make certain products be produced. So you have to get all of these levels of industry to these products, then have power going to the power station in order for it to make them. So it adds that extra layer of complexity. Then it introduces some, I would say, I guess, unique level mechanics, different elements that change the map in some way. So for the example, there's one level that is the Panama Canal. And you can build across the canal where it's going to be filled with water. And I didn't realize this the first time I played through. I was like, oh, that's neat. I guess, like, it's the Panama Canal, but I can build across the middle of it. But they slowly construct the Panama Canal throughout the course of the level, and it fills with water. So tracks that you have down there get destroyed, and you're not allowed to build bridges on that level. So there's like one giant bridge at the one end of the map that you have to use for everything and route everything across that. Or you have to sort of race against time in order to utilize the shorter distances that go across the Panama Canal. But as they build the sections, your track will get destroyed. So that's more cost intensive. But if you're going for some of the stars for time, that's probably the only way to do it, is to figure out how to optimize your tracks that go across the canal before they get destroyed. So there's that. There's a level that has this time mechanic that once you flip the power on for the level, like for the first time, it activates a countdown timer for one of the resources that spawns every 30 seconds, and there's no way to stop it. So you have to make sure you're utilizing that resource to its fullest, because once the station fills up and the train gets there with the resource, it turns around because the station is full. So then you have to either create some kind of weird loop to keep the train away from your other trains until you get too many on the map that it causes a horrible cascading failure that crashes everything. Or you have to basically burn resources to keep using up what the train on the timer puts out. So a one-off interesting mechanic that changes up the way that you do that map. And then there's one that has Nikola Tesla in it and a Tesla coil. And every so often the Tesla coil shoots out and destroys some of your track, which that one was kind of silly, but also very frustrating, because it's like, you keep breaking the track. And one of the bonus stars on that map,
and Tesla's just saying, it's just a prototype, relax.
One of the bonus stars on that map, it was to not crash any trains, and the Tesla coil can actually shoot the track that your train is on currently and blow it up, and that counts as a train crash. So that one's frustrating. I had to redo that map a couple of times though, because I just fucked up when the Tesla coil first activated. I had built my train track all wrong. There's certain maps that start to really encourage you to utilize this sort of so there's this mechanic that if you send anything to a city or a wrong station, that is a station that doesn't accept that particular good, it will turn the train around automatically and spit it back out, and then it'll be going the opposite direction down the track. There are certain maps that encourage you to do that sort of thing because they're very small and you have to save space. So then you have to really watch how many tracks you have, or how many trains you have on the tracks, because they might crash into each other when one turns around and is now running the opposite direction on the train tracks. So they just started adding a bunch of interesting mechanics that make the game more challenging in one way or another. They also started utilizing the challenges a lot more effectively. I felt like for the first dozen or so levels, it was, okay, here's this challenge that's going to maybe point you in the direction of a mechanic we think that you should probably use, but you can ignore it. But then later on, it's like, okay, so this is really incentivizing me to try and play this map in a different way in order to achieve this challenge. And I'm familiar with these mechanics now, and I'm not as worried to try putting them into place. And then I went back and I replayed so far the first 10 levels, and I got 5 stars on every map so far, just because I've mastered the mechanics, and the first levels are really easy and are very clearly like teaching tools, but playing them with a 5-year-old makes them overly difficult. But it's a really good game that I've enjoyed a lot, and I'm gonna beat it. I'm on level 30 something out of 50, so I might touch back on it one more time if there's been any interesting mechanical changes or something to the game that makes it even more unique. There's workshop support too that I just noticed. I'm sure it's been there the whole time and I didn't notice it until a couple of days ago. But there are a lot of really good looking and interesting looking puzzles that people have put together. So I'm probably going to check some of those out too after I beat the main game. But, you know, I really liked it. I really thought that this was a good game when I mentioned it a few weeks ago, and it has grown on me since. So this is like a double recommendation for Train Valley 2. It gets 2 thumbs up.
Don't you mean toots on the whistle or something?
Choo choo. 2 dings of the bell. But yeah, really good game. So, from talking about games to talking about a game in the Gameclub.
Yes, I do believe so. No, I think that's about it. So,
okie dokie.
So, Gameclub time, because it is the end of the month.
Indeed. So, if this is the first time you've ever listened to our podcast, the first time you have actually, I am sorry. I had a stroke earlier. It was really bad. I think I might have recovered, but who knows?
Do you still smell burnt toast?
Yes. I always smell burnt toast. But anyways, if this is your first time listening to a Gameclub episode of the podcast, welcome. Rage and I typically have very different taste in games, and even the games that we play that happen to be the same game at different points in time, we approach them differently. We have different ways of... Indeed. We have different ways of enjoying them. And Gameclub allows us to play the same game at the same time and encourage our community members to play and contribute as well. And then we can come together and talk about it. But anyways, this month's game was Fault Milestone One. It's been some time since we have done a visual novel.
Yeah, last one was If My Heart Had Wings, which was February of 18? 17?
17. I still lived at my old house. So that was 2 years ago.
So yeah, it's been a while.
This one was much shorter and much more linear than If My Heart Had Wings, but it was still an extremely interesting game that I'm pretty sure we both liked based on
this was
initial conversation.
Yeah, this is what's considered a kinetic novel, which is either a novel that has no choices in it whatsoever, or ones that have no meaning to the actual overall story, which that's what this one falls into. So technically a kinetic novel that can be beaten. I think I spent about 5 or 6 hours. So, but I also went back and reread a couple of things because there was a couple times that I honestly kind of glazed over, which I think that's a good point to go into our criticisms of the game, right?
Yeah. Well,
without getting into the story, which, by the way. Major story spoilers coming up if you wish to play this at some point in the future and not be spoiled. Save this for another time.
Yeah, I guess we can talk generally for a few minutes, but I don't know how much we can talk about this before we start getting into major spoiler territory. But
how about just the way that they kind of handled the game overall? The omniscient third player or third person perspective, where it felt like the point of view kept jumping from character to character was a bit off-putting for quite a while to me.
Yeah.
Where after a while, it was actually a little bit difficult for me to keep track of who exactly was who until, I actually learned the characters a bit more and could go back at name. Because typically, whenever you have a visual novel, it's not as overt about jumping from point of view to point of view, or I should say, as random going from point of view to point of view, or you have essentially a first-person perspective. This was, they were going through thoughts, they were talking about past, they would suddenly go on a lesson about this random term that this character just used for about a minute or two.
Yeah, for a while you spend your main point of view, like there's the in media res opening, where that you're with a couple of different characters, and then you spend a while, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, in Ratona's point of view, which is one of the main characters, and I don't have a problem like saying names as like a spoiler. But you spend a while in her point of view, and then it just like goes buck wild for a while, and you jump around a bunch of people's point of views.
Yeah, especially during a very long flashback sequence.
Yeah.
I mean, you go through, like 3 or 4 different point of views at one point?
Yeah, and there's one point towards the end, which we'll talk about more specifically, but where it jumps POV like mid-sentence, and it took me a minute to catch it, and I had to go like reread that whole section a couple of times and be like, wait, what just happened? And I was like, oh, I see what they did.
Yeah, I do think that some of this is culture, because going and randomly explaining a term, that is a very Japanese thing to do. I mean, just let's pick something almost at random. How about an anime that we're both watching? My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
Whenever a new character shows up, they quickly give a synopsis of their power, and that's about it. It goes a lot more in depth, and honestly, I would say 95% of their backstory that they give doesn't really, matter in the overall story. It makes things make slightly more sense, but not as much so to really be able to have it be there. Besides, they have a perfect setup at the end of the story to be able to have to explain stuff later on in the second game. But we'll get to that later.
So this, going back to this, like sort of explaining stuff, I did feel like, I'm like, okay, they're really aping an anime with this. And it's fine to very briefly explain stuff, but you have to work towards your medium. If you're watching something, you can use a combination of on-screen visuals and narration to quickly make some points about backstory or explain something. I mean, yeah, you can take it way too far, absolutely. You can do a bad job of it. But within 30 seconds to a minute, you can explain anything that you need to within a TV show, an anime, a movie, whatever. Something where you can combine multiple types of medium in the experience. But in a visual novel, you're reading everything. So you have to read,
and this is
stop and look up at the page.
Novel, I might add.
Yeah, so you're reading everything. You have to stop and look up. If there's like stuff on screen, you can't divide your focus as well. Like, I'm sure there are some people who can read and look at other stuff at the same time. I can't do that. So these scenes that might take 30 seconds to a minute in an anime would take 5 minutes to read through and look at potential stuff on screen.
Especially if they start to get descriptive, because that's another thing that kind of bugged me about how they handled the actual text. Is that there was times that they would go into exquisite detail of, well, she obviously has done this before, but it's a static image, so, it doesn't really convey it. But that may just be a budget thing.
And they front-loaded a bunch of that, too.
Oh, yeah. The achievements show that a lot of people have done this game before they even finish the first chapter. And honestly, I cannot blame them, because, oh, damn, the monologuing.
Yeah, the first chapter spends a lot of time just faffing about and dealing with this character stuff that, like we mentioned earlier, really gets thrown to the wayside almost immediately, and
especially since
until the end of the game.
Yeah, especially since some of the characters that are in the intro don't even show up again at all. And they just go on and on and on and on about it. This feels like a game that could have easily cut a good hour of content out and not, you wouldn't have noticed.
Yeah.
Especially whenever they did now, this is something that I think I may have caught that there was a moment that I was like, wait, what? They did a flashback. They did a flashback covering the same stuff again. Was I the only...
what are you...
they were talking about I have to go to the character list now. Rudo's growing up. They covered that like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, you get that from 2 perspectives. You get it from both Rudo and Rune's perspective, or was it... No, from his dad's perspective. Sid.
Yeah, but they cover the exact same stuff.
Yeah.
Which makes it feel redundant, even though it's a different point of view. Part of me wonders if some of that is also lost to translation because I think it's originally a Japanese game. So part of me wonders if there's a slightly different wording that is a lot more subtle, but a lot more meaningful than repeating the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, something that conveys maybe a difference in meaning that's lost in translation.
Yeah, instead of Groundhog Daying.
Yeah. I'm trying to think any other stuff in the general sort of discussion before we have to get into the nitty gritty of it. I really like the soundtrack. It's a good original track.
Yeah, I thought the soundtrack was pretty good. I wish that, especially for some of the scenes where they stay in an area for quite a while, that the soundtrack looped better. So it wasn't as obvious that, the audio just repeated. That kind of took me out of it a little bit.
I noticed that a couple of times.
The bad one, I believe, was the bar.
Yeah, the bar was really bad.
And especially, there were several times that you go to the bar or the tavern, and spent a long time there.
Yeah, there's an extended scene, maybe like 30 or 40 minutes where you're there, going through a bunch of stuff. But you come back to it several times. And you go back to the tavern like 4 or 5 times in the course of the story.
Yeah, and I gotta say that maybe this is just me, and because so much of it was in flashback, that this feels like a story that kind of played out before you even show up, and you basically clean up the entire thing in like a day.
Yeah,
it feels like it's not quite inconsequential that you're there, but close to it.
Yeah, your character, the main character, I guess,
or characters. Let's just
the dual protagonists that show up, like are catalyze this event that happens, but then they just sort of are in the back seat for the rest of the time as your character POV switches. That's when it goes to that crazy, like, let's change POV a half a dozen times, and there's a new main character.
Spin the wheel of POV.
On. Yeah. And then, you've just as you feel like you're getting back in control again, the game ends. So that's frustrating. I think it sounds like we're being kind of down on this game. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I immediately wanted to play Part 2, or Part 2A, because the second one is split into 2 pieces, and there's a third one that is also a prequel, I think, or we think, that's supposed to come out between Parts A and B of Chapter 2. So it's a weird storytelling split, but I immediately wanted to play whatever next chunk was out. Mm-hmm. And I haven't yet, but I want to play it. And I thoroughly enjoyed the storytelling. It gets into some very deep philosophical stuff.
Yeah, which honestly I didn't expect.
Yeah, it covers some interesting psychology. The story feels a little more nuanced than you would think if you have any experience with most visual novels.
Well, I disagree with that.
Okay.
That's because of your taste in visual novels.
Most visual novels out there, you can make fun of me all you want, that's fair. But most visual novels out there, that at least exists in the Western market are trash. There are good ones, absolutely. I have played some good ones. We have played now 2 on this show, but most of them are trash because I think most Western audiences, when it comes to visual novels, wants light porn.
I will say that
light hentai.
there is a good market that is essentially just porn games that gets sent over, but that's because that's what's popular in the West, and it doesn't require as much translation. So I think it's kind of a low bar of entry for that. But that's not saying that, I'm not one to try to lump the entire genre or medium into this because of what's represented in the Western market. Because don't make me start recommending visual novels to you.
I mean, and like I said, I've got some good ones outside of the trash that I like to. But
I also do think that
read,
some of the bias that you have because you've read a fair amount of trash. I would like to see your thoughts on Clonad, but unfortunately, that is like a 100-hour novel to get through.
Yeah, which I wouldn't be opposed to doing at some point, but I couldn't sit down and play or do that like I did this, because I did the whole thing in one sitting. I've got my...
Yeah, I broke this up because there was several times that they would just start going off, and it's just like, okay, I need to step away.
Yeah, I went to start it Sunday night, and I was too tired to start. And I started, I got through the first 15, 20 minutes. I was like, okay, I'm too tired for this. I need to come back. And I started over yesterday because I had the day off from work. So I did the whole thing yesterday. My office is set up. Now I've got a TV mounted on the wall in front of my recliner. So I just kicked back in the recliner, got some snacks, some drinks, adjusted the TV just so, and played it on my TV. And it was an excellent experience. So that also helped me feel good.
Yeah, I actually did a fair chunk of it Steam Link to my phone.
One sort of final general thing that I want to say before we kind of say if we liked it or not overall, and then move on to the specifics. I really like the aesthetic. I almost said art style, but that's wrong. This is a fairly standard sort of visual novel, anime art style, but the aesthetic that they went for...
The world theme.
Yeah, the theme is interesting. There's some unique stuff to it. There's some stuff that I've seen before, but this sort of combination of retro sci-fi plus fantasy element that they've got going on.
Sort of Star Wars if it went steampunk.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. But I really like it. It feels fairly unique overall. Like I said, there's some elements that I've seen before in other stuff, but I don't think I've seen anything quite like this. And I was impressed. And I was impressed overall with the world building. There are points where it drags, but once the story gets rolling, it doesn't really slow down too much. There's a lot of really good world building going on in there. So I like the world, every bit of it.
Yeah, I have to agree with that one. It's a rather refreshing set dressing, world building, even though I think that may actually be slightly part of just because they monologue so much that we understand some of what's going on, but at the same time, it's just a very strange combination. I would say, turn of the 20th century-esque technology for the most part in the world meets medieval fantasy. So that was a very interesting combination.
Yeah, there's some interesting magic is analog to technology stuff that they use in neat ways. Like saying that radio waves are
travel along essentially the mana web. That encompasses most of the planet.
Yeah. But we're
and
going to
that's
start
also
getting into...
and that's also a very interesting plot element as well.
Yeah. So, just general thoughts about did you like it or not? And would you recommend it or not? And then we'll move on to the specifics about the game. Because I just want to, if someone has listened this far and then they were wondering, should I go play this and then come back for the rest of it? Like, what do you think?
Overall, I liked it. At first, I absolutely hated it, but it was because the opening sequence, because of my Western sensibilities, felt like amateur hour. It's a weird thing to say that they were telling and not showing in a visual novel. Yeah. But that's what they were doing quite a bit. On top of reading thoughts instead of letting characters' mannerisms come into play. It's one thing if you're doing a first-person character and you just outright state their thoughts. That's one thing. But to have, the example I used was that one character that was... Where'd I put the character list? There it is. One of the assaulters, which was Coco, I think it was. She was coming in, and they were talking about how she was nonplussed by the all the blood, and that she's obviously done this before. To my sensibilities, that's a very amateur way to put it. Instead of having her, maybe nudge a soldier onto his back that's been killed, and just look at him, something like that. That's he's not that she's not off put by the sight of blood. That she's not off put by all the carnage. A very simple thing like that. Instead of talking at length about how she's obviously done this before, that this doesn't faze her, and then get into some of the terms that she used in the one sentence that she already said. So that it started off very, very rough for me. And to be honest, if I'd played this before, I would have not put this on the Gameclub list because of that opening. And I think the Steam Achievements agree with me that it is a very, very, very rough thing to get through. It was less than a third of the people that owns the game has gotten through the first chapter, but then there's a really good carryover if they gotten through it.
Yeah, it's somewhere around 30 to 35%. Only 30 to 35% make it through the entire first chapter, but if you make it through the first chapter, you're like 95% of the people that make it past the first chapter finish the whole game.
Well, I think that's also a combination of novel length and also the end of the first chapter is where things start to pick up.
Yeah. So my general thoughts are, I totally think that this game is worth it. If you like visual novels, there's a lot to chew on and unpack here. I almost said despite the fact that it's really short, but I think that's a selling point for it. Like, one of the reasons
it's a selling point, especially for its price point, because it is about $15 usually.
I'm not sure. I got it for like a couple of bucks. It might have been in a humble bundle.
It's 15, yeah.
But, it's short. It took me about 5 hours to get through it. Steam says I have 10 hours, but I ran it for trading cards before I actually went through it. So it took me about 5 hours to get through it. And that's a big selling point for me as well. Like, I have a hard time committing to a 40 or a 50 or 100-hour visual novel. That's a long time to sit and read a screen. And, like, yes, I will spend 100 hours a month easy just, like, reading things. But it's like, I have to sit and intentionally participate in this, which is fine, but I only have a limited amount of time each day or each week to do so, and that takes up a lot of that time. But this is just a quick experience. I had the day off. I sat down in the morning, and I played through the whole thing by lunchtime, and I was done. And it was good, and I enjoyed it. So if you've made it this far, but you haven't played the game, and you're like, well, I like visual novels, or I think I might like this. Is it worth it? I think so. I really do think so.
Yeah, I will say that if you're a speed reader, I would say kind of take the foot off the accelerator a little bit, especially because they jump around point of views a fair bit towards the middle third of the game.
Yeah.
According to Steam, I have 10 hours total, which is 7.1 hours in the last 2 weeks, which was when I did this. I know I got up and hobbled around for a bit because there was a sequence that I was like, oh shit, which we'll get to in a little bit. But also the fact that I just needed to step away after a long going into another flashback and talking about the various terms. Just okay, I need to go get a drink or something.
Yeah,
I will say that it ran well on the Steam Link though. But it is a visual novel. But if you have a decent enough sized phone that you could read it easily, I would say it's definitely a good way to read it. I would amend that, saying that you want to set it up where you have the mouse controls, because click to advance, but also drag on a controller button, left bumper, I believe, from the Xbox controller, so you could go back and reread easily enough.
Yeah,
because there's not an easy way to scroll, which is the main way here. Oh, I will say that also. This should have been the technical bit, but oh well. It is a fully featured visual novel for this price, which is actually a bit of a rarity. It has a full gallery. It has a full musical section. A couple of videos, not much. But yeah, it's pretty full featured for its price, which is a little bit surprising. It's just not voiced, which is the only kind of negative towards it, which is minor.
Yeah. Okay. So, specifics. Here there be many spoilers.
As in all of them.
What? You broke up.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, you just kind of trailed off there, and I thought, oh no. Did you have a stroke or did your connection die?
You kind of shut off there. I don't know. It's probably my internet. My thing stayed green the whole time, but it was probably me, so.
Well, if your thing is turning green, you probably should go see a doctor. You've been stroking it too much.
Hey-o. But yes, here there be spoilers. I'll do a little cut, fix that.
Yeah, all of the spoilers.
So let's run through the sort of top down of the story pretty quickly. It's actually on the surface a fairly simple story that where you really get into is the deeper end is the nuance about the characters and the backstories. The overall story is you are playing. Let me pull up the character list here. You are playing, well, air quotes playing.
Well, yeah, you're kind of a dual protagonist in this. You're Renota. I'm not even going to try her last name. A royal guard to the Princess Stephanie, who, like I said, is the princess to the kingdom of, did they actually say? Rosenhind?
Yeah, I don't know what those words mean.
Well, I'm surprised that...
Kingdom of Rosenheide? It looks very, either like Germanic or...
Yeah, I was about to say very German.
Yeah. The kingdom of the Rug Kingdom. You're the princess, and the princess is like main bodyguard for Rug Kingdom.
Yeah, and the princess is actually very important in this. More so than usual because of this magic that the royal line has. And this is the main reason why, or ties into the overall story. This?
Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were.
Oh, well, I heard but, so but the princess and the royal family has this magic called the Path Down, which is an imbuement of the previous owner's experience and from everyone that's held it before them. Oh, I just realized it's the all for one, or sorry, one for all from My Hero Academia. That's it.
Sort of, yeah.
where the experience and the knowledge of the previous owner is passed along to the next generation of ruler in this kingdom to essentially instantly make them the best ruler possible. And the king is in hiding, and we don't know exactly why this group of 3 or 4 different people are assaulting the kingdom, only that they seem to know exactly where the princess was going to be, and they're trying to kill her and the king at the same time to prevent the path down from activating.
Yeah. But so, very top down, like the game starts and you're playing as, well, actually you're playing as the bad guys, as they come to assassinate the princess. The princess and her bodyguard use a special type of like teleportation magic to escape. It goes wrong.
Yeah, that's highly experimental. That's the thing. Yeah. Is that the reason why they are so off where they plan to be? They explained that it was the first time that was ever used, that it was supposed to lead them to a safe house, but something went wrong and they don't know what. And instead they ended up on the other side of the planet. And remember how I said that the magic web kind of encompassed most of the planet? They ended up in the one place that it doesn't. And
yes.
And the
world
way
has got...
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was saying, and the way that the magic system works in this game is that instead of building magic within yourself, you kind of take it from the environment and hold it. So they're going to be slowly leeching their magic if they're in this void just via osmosis. So they're in trouble if they stay here.
Yeah. And it's not that there's no magic or no mana here, but it's like there's not very much. It's like a point, like they describe it as being there's like 4 points in the world where magic sort of originates and flows from, and the farther you get from those points, the lower the concentration gets. And this is like the point on the planet where none of the magic poles really cover it, and so they just sort of have like a very small amount of
like the background noise.
Yeah. So the people who live there don't really have access to magic like the rest of the world does.
So instead they rely on technology. So it comes down to a magic versus science pretty much immediately.
Yeah. But so they wind up here. They stumble into this town where they're very clearly outsiders. They don't look like or sound like or speak the language of anyone there.
Yeah, which that is one thing that was a little bit annoying, was that the princess was able to suddenly be able to speak the language because she understood a lot of languages, so she was able to understand a completely foreign language from the other side of the planet.
Well, it was also that and magic.
No. They specifically said it wasn't magic. It was her.
No, they said it was. They said it was a combination of her knowledge and her magic, like her imbued royal magicness. Because it's not like it wasn't one of the specific magic forms that they used, but she was like, as a royal, she's naturally magically inclined towards knowledge or towards language. And they said that she could speak 8 languages without the assistance of magic, which there's a name for it. Artirum? But then she's able to use that magic to help her understand language faster.
Which they have a link between her and Ronoda to also communicate silently.
Yeah.
So when she figures it out, she's essentially working as a translator.
Yeah. But so they wander around this town trying to get some money so that they can get some, which that's an interesting point. They come from a post-scarcity environment.
Well, not only that, but they also talk about later on where, because how magic essentially just balances out the sexes, where it's pretty equal power between both the male and female sexes. So whenever they have an encounter where it's obvious that the men still hold the power in this other kingdom or other country, it feels completely foreign to them because, but it also makes sense because they don't have magic to counterbalance it.
Yeah,
and they haven't gotten to our point of technology just yet, for the most part, where information is kind of counterbalanced everything.
But So they get some money, and they're gonna try and figure out like to get some clothes, and they need to get something called sediment, which is like basically just it's rocks or crystals that have soaked up lots of magical energy.
Yeah, it's essentially just rocks that were near one of the poles that just acted as a sponge.
Yeah,
and they were looking for class 4 to essentially pool what mana they had, because they already could tell that they felt off because they just didn't have the magic around them like they're used to. It's sort of like if you're standing at the bottom of the mountain and then suddenly are teleported to the top of it, because you have so much less oxygen that you're used to, you're going to suffer a sickness about it. Well, that's what especially Renata was suffering from, because she was a battlecaster. So she used a lot of magic before, and the royal line tends to try to stockpile theirs and use as little as possible.
Yeah. So they do describe it like air, like how if you go to somewhere with little air. So I guess the best way to think of these rocks is they're like oxygen tanks, where that you could store mana and then draw it if you needed it. But anyways, this is where they stumble into Rune, which is the main.
Well, they also
protagonist.
Well, before that, they also really showed that they were outsiders, because this item that they were looking for, class 4 sediment, which was just very impure but still could hold mana, that they described as children's toys. Well, here it's very rare and is a precious resource, more so than gold.
Yeah.
So they were warned about this several times, but it never really came up as a consequence, because they would just tell anyone it's one off. Don't tell people that you could use mana and that you have mana in you, because they'll drain you dry, filling sediment.
Yeah, and then they tell multiple people and use mana several times, and nothing ever happens. But after this, they run into Rune, which is the next, or the third main protagonist that sort of is who the story centers around. And this is where we were mentioning earlier, like the game starts to go through a whole bunch of perspective shifts. They go on sort of a little mini adventure, a day on the town. They get supplies. They go out to dinner at a tavern. We get introduced to her and learn some things about her. And there's some stuff that to me felt extremely obvious, where they're like, keep saying like, oh, she doesn't seem quite right. She doesn't seem, oh my gosh, she's a robot. She's a robot. And that's,
I didn't get robot
close.
right away. I went to clone as soon as they talked about the Sisters project. I thought, they cloned her a bunch of times. And I wasn't sure where to put it whenever they kind of smashed a keg of ale on her.
Yeah.
But also,
like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking robot, like, right away. I think it's closer to, like, cyborg, because they sort of insinuate that, like, she has some sort of soul or
essentially,
mind.
This is late game, but let's go for it. Basically, they talked about how everyone, even in the outer poles, has an innate mana about them, and that holds, essentially, that's their soul. And in this world, people mummify, or at least they used to, the dead. And somehow the original Rune's mana was still lingering enough that she could be transferred into this robotic body, with some consequences for the person that was doing it, which we'll get to later.
Yeah. But so, we're introduced to Rune. We spend the whole day with her, and we find out, like, there's only, they say there's like 3 more days that you guys can be here before your mana sort of runs out, and then you're basically stuck here permanently because your body acclimates, and then it won't be able to soak up any additional mana, or you die. One of those two things happens. Mm-hmm. And they don't really specify exactly which is going to happen to our main characters, but it's one of those two. And
yeah, but they really do faff about, don't they?
They do really faff about. But so then Rune is like, wait, before you leave, meet me tomorrow. I'm going to give you something. And then we find out later that it's her sort of brother, story, philosophy stuff. But this guy shows up and the next day and gives them a class 1 sediment, which is like pure.
Yeah, it's highly pure. It's able to. That's the thing, is that the magic system is based around 5 elements, and essentially a class 1 was able to take something pure mana and not change it. But a class 4, if it took in some mana, it would change some of it to a secondary type, which could be troublesome for certain spells.
Yeah.
But could be used for other things.
But so this guy shows up and he's like, hey, that person you were talking to wasn't really a person. She's a thing, an object. And they think that they're referring to slavery. And he's
which,
like,
in a way, they kind of are.
Yeah, but he was like, she was caught stealing this. I just want you gone, so take it and leave. And you're like, no, we're not going to do that.
Well,
and
you
so
have a choice here.
Yeah, you have the game's only choice, which is meaningless, which is like you can choose to meddle and try and stop it, or you can choose to essentially respect what's going on and leave because you need to.
Yeah, I chose not to meddle just to see what would happen.
I also made that choice.
It ignored
but then it's like, yeah, and they're like, well, we probably shouldn't. It's, you're whatever, but we're going to do it anyways. And it's like, well, okay, that's kind of what I expected, but whatever. So then you spend a little bit more time investigating with these characters, looking for Rune again. You run into her. She's like acting all weird. They call her Sarah instead of Rune now. And it's like she's had her memory erased. We spend a little background we get a couple of scenes of Rudo and some of the other like board members for this company.
Yeah, which a lot of them aren't named. They're just there by letter, which is makes it a little hard to follow at times.
Yeah, but we get like some very basic like what's going on with her. And then as you start investigating the story about what's up with her, you start getting into these huge point POV shifts because you go through a history of like how Rudo saw the events, which is Rudo is the CEO, Rune's brother, the guy who gives you the class 1 sediments. You see his history of events, and then you see his father's history of events. Or maybe I get that backwards. Maybe you see his father. And I don't remember exactly. This part is very confusing. Like, the story itself in the background is sort of easy enough to work out, but the order in which it comes is very confusing because different characters' POVs will repeat stuff.
It's
a
Memento.
couple of times. Yeah. But so you get sort of
sorry, I just had that, it's like, this is like several different ideas thrown together, like Memento.
Yeah.
Oh.
But so you get these characters' sort of history from both Rudo, Sid, Rune, and then Albus, who's a character we haven't really talked about yet, but he's another one of the sort of CEO board member people who is a little closer to Sid, which is Rudo's father, which I understand that this is very confusing. We should put a link to Visual Novel Database, so it has all the characters listed, and you can sort of look at them as we talk about them.
Yeah, and I will say that there is options to turn off spoilers and not.
Yeah. But, so you just get a whole bunch of bouncing around as you hear essentially the story of Rune, this little girl who is a sociopath. She has no emotions. She manipulates people. She tortures and kills animals. She's a sociopath. They don't outright say that in the game, but immediately they were like, oh, she doesn't have any emotions. I'm like, oh, she's a sociopath.
They even go as far to talk about her brain not having that center in it. Yep. Bring out the MRI machine.
Yeah, which is sociopathy. Anyone who has questions about sociopathy, feel free to email the show.
VGLpodcast@gmail.com.
Yep, ask your questions. You can have them answered by a real therapist who has actually worked with a sociopath before. That's interesting. But that's...
having some flashbacks during this, huh?
Yeah, but so, she's a sociopath who there's a very brutal scene where she beats a kid nearly to death.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. I'm not sure whose kid it is. I'm not sure if it's the tailors that we run into before that gives us a set of clothes, or if it's one of the board members, because it's the same surname.
I'm
thinking it's the tailor.
I thought it was the board member's kid who is the tailor.
He's a nephew because they talked about his being an uncle.
Oh,
that's why this is where the point of view shifts got very confusing. But if I recall correctly, at one point he talked about the tailor, Hertz, just to make things easier. Talked about losing his family, but he never went into the specifics about it. So that's why I'm thinking it's him, but I'm not 100% sure just because of how the POV shifts and everything, and that there's multiple people that they refer to by the same surname.
Yeah.
But this is also, I believe, just a translation problem.
Yeah, that was a little bit confusing. And by a little bit, I mean a lot of it. But you see
but
her
that
story.
Also makes me think that the kid was directly targeted and wasn't a random attack because of his association with Albus, which is her father's best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And she could be very conniving in trying to hurt people, as we'll find out in a little bit.
Yeah. So Rune, anyways, she's a sociopath. You get to explore her story as she grows older. I think this happens during Sid's POV, as we get to see her as a preteen, maybe a teenager.
Yeah, she was like 6 during that attack, and then 4 or 6 years passed, so she's in the 10 to 12-year-old range.
She's a tween.
But damn tweens with their fidget spinners and murder sticks.
But she is doing the sort of manipulative, lying portion of sociopathy, where she's, essentially lying to everyone, manipulating them to make them think what they want about her. Everyone believes that she has turned into this sweet little girl, but turns out she's still making plans to do horrible things and torturing and killing animals in the park. And she poisons her mom. Her mom does not die from the poison. She dies later. She kills...
her mom was of weak constitution, just naturally. And she got sick from the poison and actually threw it up before it poisoned her. And the actual poison that she chose was actually very deliberate as well.
Yeah.
It was this drug called Process One that was being made by the rival of her father's company that caused a lot of problems when she was little.
Essentially, Process One is a super steroid,
yeah,
which makes people makes them stronger, able to function for longer periods of time without eating or sleeping, and it makes them immune or resistant to the sort of mana poisoning effect that happens. Shock. Yeah, they call it mana shock, but you made an excellent observation that I didn't catch, that it's kind of like radiation poisoning, how it builds up in a person's system over time.
Yeah,
and causes a lot of similar symptoms. That's what it felt like,
especially whenever the father later on was suffering from it, and he was coughing up blood constantly, and was talking about weakness in various parts of his body.
Yeah.
So that's and also how they talked about going away from coal to use mana as a power. So that's what it felt like to me.
Yeah. So she uses this to poison her mom and
a bunch of board members.
10 or 12?
It was something like a dozen board members of the company as her father was trying to expand into the outer poles, which was where mana is more plentiful. Plus, she had a lot more stockpiled to be able to do more damage.
But she dies. She kills her. It doesn't say for sure, but it
no. It said for sure that she committed suicide.
Oh, okay. So she stowed away or booked transport on a ship that was going out.
Yeah, she stowed away on a ship that was going to essentially to the outer poles to suffer mana shock. And once the ship reached its destination, which that's also kind of an interesting thing, is how the ship could go from point A to point B and not, have the crew suffer from that unless they, there has to be something going on there, or there's a certain concentration.
I mean, they have robots. This comes up. They have automata.
No. That was after the fact.
I thought that he had developed the basic mining bots, though.
But they weren't that advanced.
Well, but you could make a mana computer or whatever to drive the. I just assumed that it was either the robots or they used people from outside who could come and go as long as they didn't spend too long at the outermost pole.
Yeah, it's kind of
whatever that place was called.
It's kind of weird. There's a lot of monologuing and talking about backstory on things that make no difference whatsoever, but then they skip over pretty important details.
Yeah, they just hand wave this, which I mean is fine. I'm okay with them doing that.
Yeah, it's just kind of that justification,
Yeah, but so that happens to Rune, and like I said, you see this flashback from multiple point in time from multiple perspectives, and each one does have some uniqueness to it and tells a little bit more of the story each time you go. Sid, Rudo and Rune's father, after Rune dies, and then her mother, what was her name? Something. Elne? Aline?
Aline. I would go with Aline. Essentially, her mother was always of weak constitution. After losing Rune in this brutal way and having Rune try to kill her before that, just completely wouldn't eat, just wasted away and died of a broken heart, essentially.
Yeah. After that, Sid you think that he goes crazy, and he honestly kind of does, but what he's doing is he's working on this project. He's heard of the path down, and he knows that it works through mana, and he's like, well, I've done so much with mana, if they can do it, I can replicate this process with science. And he creates...
science!
Science!
Bitch!
But he creates a perfect replica of his daughter. He creates an android, think like Data. And then he is able to use the path down, combination of science and like a huge amount of mana that they have stored at their facility. Like, they talk about it, like, they don't give a specific number, but they talk about it like it's the equivalent of hundreds of millions or billions of dollars worth of research and development and product, essentially, and in the mana to make this happen. And in doing so, like, in completing the path down, he winds up killing himself, but
which he was already suffering from severe mana poisoning anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, before he does that, he's constantly coughing up blood for ages, and talking about his arm. It feels like it's being eaten away, which was where he got the mana shock before, that he was able to move it. Which cancer, right?
Yeah. But so, completing this path down process, he passes on, his memories, his experiences, and he's able to capture sort of Rune's spirit with that whole mana thing we were talking about earlier, and put that back in her body, and then pass on his memories and experiences to her, which imbues her with his creativity and emotion, thus curing her sociopathy.
Well, he didn't put his memories and experiences in. He's only copied the part of his brain that handled emotion. He wanted to essentially recreate Rune as if she didn't have the brain injury, brain defect, or whatever. That's all that he wanted. He didn't want any part of himself to survive outside of that.
The lack of activity in her prefrontal cortex.
Well, look at you, almost like you know what you're talking about.
Almost like I do this for a living. So yeah, he puts that stuff into her, which effectively cures her of her sociopathy. And then we get quite a bit of flashback of as she develops and she starts to pick back up on these memories, the philosophical discussion of like, is she a person? Is she not a person? How does this work? The scientists are like, we can't, like, if we take her apart, we can't put her back together. We will effectively kill her if we break her down to try and figure out what's going on inside. And
also, whenever she was resurrected, he purposely destroyed all the notes and the flooding of mana into that laboratory destroyed most of the machinery. She was essentially, at the eye of this mana storm that destroyed everything around her. So there's no notes or anything outside of the Sisters Project that they're very basic automatons, that they're human-esque, but there was this part where they started going into science versus religion, which they were talking about building these sisters to help with the Process 1 victims because the mana shock that they were suffering was contagious, which, radiation. And the Sisters of the Church were succumbing to it. So they were wanting to build the automatons to try to repair the image of the company. I'm not 100% sure where they were going with that. And they were never able to produce one because the church said they lacked heart. So they were intentionally letting people die, which feels a little bit of, a little preachy, honestly, on both sides of the argument, doesn't it?
Yeah, I didn't quite understand that whole... Well, I understood it. I didn't understand why they went down that whole path because it seemed kind of irrelevant to the overall philosophy.
And overly preachy on both sides of the argument of, science can make people gods. Well, we should just embrace what we have and as God's blessing and not try to advance. Both arguments kind of fell flat to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it just never paid off, honestly.
It comes back up one more time later on, and they're like, we took her down there to the church, and they didn't know that she wasn't a real girl. Like, I'm heavily paraphrasing. But it was like, there was no interest because we couldn't recreate the process. So, yeah, it's like, okay, cool, I guess. But, so anyways, you go through this part where she's essentially becoming human as she regains memories, and experiences new things, and how the intersection with the main characters, whatever, sets her on this path, or sets everybody on this path to resolution, like bringing the situation to a head, because she does something that she knows is wrong. She steals to help her new friends because she feels compassion and happiness with them. And that, in combination with using mind melding, they're able to convey all of this to Rudo, who has hated her this whole time.
Yeah, he's had this sword of Damocles hanging over her because he hated his sister partially because of what she was, because she was a sociopath. She was bitch be crazy, right?
She was evil. I mean,
they talked about devil incarnate several times. Yeah. Which, okay, here's something that I saw brought up, and it's like, oh yeah, how did nobody connect Sarah and Rune outside of the company? I mean, because she was a meter reader essentially.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually,
I mean, I know that they kept Rune secluded for a while after the fact, essentially home arrest. But she eventually got out and was around, and her father recreated her about the age that she died. So it was like she skipped a few years, and there's a resemblance, but it's definitely not her. But no, it's definitely her. But everybody will immediately clam up and talk about she's evil the moment you talk about Rune. But Sarah, she's a sweet girl. She comes around and read the meter once a month.
Yeah.
Well, it's not meter reader. It's essentially swapping out a filter but same process essentially.
Yeah, it's just to come by and essentially do some minor maintenance on the system that converts mana to energy. But yeah, I don't know how that they didn't make that connection aside from game reasons, narrative reasons.
Video game logic?
Video game logic. Ding. But Rudo has this huge change of heart because he's finally able to recognize that she is a person, and his dad didn't go crazy or he did, but
there was
it wasn't all in vain. He wasn't wasting his time.
There was this one scene about him listening in that he remembered. At least I think remembered, or was a mind meld, or this is the part of the story where things are a little weird about who's actually talking, about never wanting Ruder to be alone, and that's the entire reason why he recreated a rune.
Yeah. So, but then Rudo's like, okay, you're a person, go be with your new friends. And he gives them some experimental technology, which is essentially a radio, because they've lost the ability to communicate via telepathy magic, because there's just not enough magic in the current area. And they never got that sediment. Yeah. So he gives them a magic radio and is like, we'll keep the connection open from here so we can talk to you. And
they were talking about, but that would be a very expensive, wouldn't it? It's a prototype. It's field testing.
Yeah.
So obviously a major change of heart, because up until this point he's been a cold bastard. I mean, he talked about
he's cold, calculating efficiency.
Yeah. I mean, he had a lot of shit to deal with going up, because he tried to warn people about Rune before the big murder spree that she went on. And nobody believed him because Rune was playing them. Albus, his friend's or his father's friend, believed him to some degree, but there was no proof because I guess everybody was missing all the murdered animals and never tried to catch who was doing it, right?
Yeah. What else is there? Okay, so then the next part of the story is everyone leaves as a party. It's like, we're striking out on our adventure. This is the final chapter. I'm like, okay, this is bound to be. Yeah,
we better hurry up. We only have 5 minutes left before we all are stuck here.
Yeah, so they leave, and I'm expecting some, a quick yes, we're going out on the road and we're doing things, and we're gonna have a slight bit of adventure, and we'll get to something that's gonna be the setup for the next chapter, and they sort of do that with this massive immediate cliffhanger, where the one of the people from it's not the opening scene, the one that rolls before the credits, the intro credits or the intro theme. After that, this person shows up for 2 seconds and intimidates the previous bad guys, and you find out that she's their boss. Her name's Milano. She shows up. She's figured out how to do the teleport.
And did it better.
And shows up and is like, haha, I'm evil, and I'm here to bring you home. You guys are all bad liars.
Oh, by the way, I killed your father.
Not who you are. Yeah, and then she's like, oh, by the way, I killed your father. Just boop, your dad's dead. And it's oh boy, they're going to fight, or something's going to happen. And then Selphine, the princess, is suddenly possessed, eyes are different, talking differently.
Yeah, I mean, she had the glow on. She turned on the high beams.
Yeah, and it doesn't tell you whether or not it's the path down, or if she's being possessed, or if she's utilizing like tapping into some of her own magic. Because she states that she wants to learn how.
Just because she had a complete personality shift and she was radiating energy, and this was immediately after them talking about her father being dead.
Yeah. And then Ratona's like, oh no, not now. Like, she knows what's going on, but we don't. And then it just ends, and it's like, come back for chapter 2. And then it comes back to the title screen, and Rune is now on the title screen with them. Where she
traveling.
Was before. Yeah, traveling, and it's cute.
I mean, if it's not the path down, I'd be surprised.
There's a lot of stuff in here. Like, I said I was going to do like a very quick overview, and we still got into some things.
Yeah.
But there's still so... Because, I mean, essentially, there's no way for us to fully explain particularly the massive amount of, like, flashback, POV shifting stuff.
Yeah, this might be one of those rare kinetic stories that actually does pay off a lot more to read the second time.
Yeah, because you'd have at least some understanding of what's going on, and you could pick up on stuff that maybe you missed the first time around because you're trying to figure out who's what,
Yeah,
when,
usually
and where.
kinetic novels are like a one shot and done, but I think this one might be a two-shotter.
So, are there any specific themes or philosophical anything you want to discuss?
I would say
Or any characters in particular?
I would say, the science and religion was interesting, but they, it felt like they picked it up just to mention it and then put it back down, which was a little frustrating that they even brought it up at that point. But the measure of a man, or woman, I guess, in this point, was a very interesting discussion. The board members going back and forth because, would it be murder to disassemble Rin to figure out what her father did to resurrect her?
Yeah. The part that I found most interesting was their sort of take on a post-scarcity society and how that reflects on a society that is intended to be more modern in the real world, in nature. Like, you think about post-scarcity as like, they have no wants, they have no needs, everything is easily provided. And this is covered in the long backstory portion. But essentially, in the world where magic is prominent, prevalent, there has been a period of 60 years where there has been no war, where everyone just sort of does what they want. Everything is equal. Because of magic, people can essentially communicate telepathically with each other. They mind meld on the regular. There's equality
you do see
between
that in the game at one point for a fairly long sequence.
There's equality, like there's gender equality. There's no prejudice, nothing, and how alien it is to come to a place where there's money and people have, wants and desires and needs that are not being fulfilled.
That slavery was just recently abolished.
Mm-hmm. That there is gender discrimination, that, like, all of these things, and it's just, like, mind-blowing to them, which I do understand from, like, the story's perspective, like, because both of these girls are very young. I think they're 19, both of them.
Yeah, late teens, early 20s. Let's see. It doesn't say, unfortunately, on the visual novel database. I do believe Selfney was 19 because they mentioned the CEO was 22 and he was only 3 years older or something like that.
Yeah.
Rudo.
So, they've spent their entire life living in essentially a paradise where they want for nothing. And, they go to a place where it's not like that.
Well, not just that, but also the path down makes it so that their ruler always is highly qualified and is able to draw on a vast amount of knowledge and experience to make the right decisions.
Yeah, and the current king is the one who has held the 60 years of peace, and it's expected that the princess, when she becomes queen, will be able to do the same, utilizing, the carefully crafted policies and experience that her father had before him. And they're just amazed by the fact that, like, no, it's not them. It's Albus, one of the board member guys, is amazed that they're able to do this. And they're shocked that it's like, well, how do you, like, choose the next person? Like, how do you give them the experience? And he's like, well, I mean, we teach them and we do the best we can.
Yeah, we use our words and writing. They go into, well, how's the next CEO? What's the ceremony? And Albus is completely flabbergasted about what they're asking, just completely confused.
But I think they do a good job of using this. The fish out of water experience allows you to take a character and put them in a situation that feels very real and use that to comment on the situation. And you can use it to deal with real world issues, current events, things involving like racism, sexism, and putting these two characters, or having these two characters come from a post-scarcity society where up until, in their world, literally a couple of days ago, everything was perfect, and dropping them in this extreme fish out of water situation, they're able to approach these philosophical questions with a great deal of sincerity, because these two girls are just, I don't want to say pure or innocent. Those are the wrong words, but they seem to represent the best that humanity can be. And they're being taken to a place that's very grimy and dirty and real. And they just want the best. And they don't understand how things work in the outside world.
Well, not just that, but they talk time and time again how essentially they have to work harder because of the lack of magic, that they feel that the god of mana has forsaken them, so they have to do everything on their own, which comes up in the kind of the science versus technology portion of the show, or part of the story, where both sides did have compelling arguments, but they never really felt fleshed out, where working with mana is working in God's domain, but at the same time, should you not try to improve your station and just deal with what you have?
Yeah. But now this story also does a good job of not completely condemning the griminess of the world. And they
showed it as a virtue that they've advanced so far. As a matter of fact, there were several times that they were amazed about some of the stuff that they were able to do that seemed mundane to the residents of that country, that they were able to do it without mana, or without the mana they're used to, because they are still using mana in a way, just they're using what they have very efficiently.
Yeah, because they have sort of trace amounts of mana in the air, and then they're able to mine mana, sort of like we would mine, coal.
Well, they actually...
they make that comparison in...
Not just make it, but the mine that they are using was a former coal mine. That right. Sid said that I think it's actually a mana mine if we just go deeper. So, it's a direct comparison between the two. But it also makes you wonder, since it's so scarce, what happens when it becomes even more so. But this is also a world that they could just import it.
Yeah, and they've answered that question already, because the other company, their competing company that only comes up in a couple of the flashback scenes, they say that they figured out how to collect mana from sort of the border where the concentration starts to increase, bring it back, and refine it. Like, they gather it from the air, and then they have to sort of purify it or filter it to make it usable.
Yeah, which is actually stealing some of their technology, Sid's technology, to be able to do it, but he doesn't care.
Yeah, because he doesn't realize what they're doing at first, so he's like, screw them, they're wasting their time. Although, I liked it, like, this company was trying to figure out how to use electricity by collecting lightning. And then I do like, too, that Sid was like, if mana wasn't a thing, I'd be trying to collect lightning in a bottle, too.
Yeah, totally Tesla, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of Ben Franklin, a little bit of Tesla. But, yeah. So they've kind of answered that question too, which is another interesting thing that just popped into my head, like the difference in renewable energy sources versus non-renewable energy sources. Like, they're getting air quotes, easy amounts, or they can easily access an energy source by digging it from the ground, but when it's all gone, what are they going to do? And there's this other company that is using, the equivalent of a renewable energy source, because they're collecting it from the air and then turning it into something. There's another question I didn't even think about that may or may not have been intended, but there it is. Although it's pretty glossed over in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, at least in this game. Because they're still in this country. They barely get outside the town, and the game ends.
Yeah. So there are many excellent, deep questions that are brought up, asked by this game. And I don't think the game answers any of them, except I feel like the game does take a stand and say that regardless of what a person might become on the outside, as long as they're human on the inside, that's what matters the most.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing to think about, because there's a podcast I listen to. I've talked about it before. It's Science and Futurism with SFIA, Isaac something or other. And he talks at great length about what it might potentially mean to be human in the future, when we might have the potential to create clones or download our consciousness to a computer or become cyborgs or androids, by replacing most of our body, or the potential for genetic engineering for us to turn ourselves into something else. It's like, at what point do we say you're human or not human, or a person or not a person? And I think the game very clearly says, like, it doesn't matter as long as you behave like a person. You have emotion and feeling and empathy towards other people, then you're a human.
Yeah, which makes the argument, was Rune originally a human and became human? Because they talked about how she seemed inhuman in the beginning when she was a real little girl, for lack of a better term. But because of the defect in her mind, where she lacked the heart, was she human then, and did she become human when she became a cyborg or android or whatever? It's kind of the flip side of that as well.
Yeah. Which is an equally good question. I think the game is taking a stand that no, she wasn't truly a human. Like, she was, Homo sapien. She was, she had the chromosomes of a human being,
but she didn't have the heart.
Wasn't. Yeah, so she wasn't maybe a person. I don't know, like, the right terminology to use for this, but she was more than an animal. She was more than animal instincts. And that feels like a bit of an oversimplification too, but I don't have the right words to use. But hopefully anyone listening gets what I mean. So, do you have any other points that you'd like to bring up? Questions potentially for me from a psychological standpoint?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I mean, I think the main thing was, the other thing, I guess, would have been, if the board didn't, or I should say, Furuto didn't have a change of heart because he had essentially the deciding factor. Was it murder to try to disassemble Rune? Was it attempted murder? Which, then you get into, where you fall on the human versus machine.
Yeah, that was legally, because there's different ways to approach that question. I would say legally, probably not, just because machines don't have personhood. They don't have any rights in this universe that has been presented to us. But ethically or morally, maybe a little bit more of a gray area, depending on how you feel about what actually makes someone a person or a human or whatever the appropriate term is. I mean, I would say that yes, it is, from my own personal standpoint on that, and based on the story, I'd say that it would be attempted murder to disassemble her, or to try and disassemble her.
No, disassemble.
But what is it from KSP? Rapid unplanned disassembly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this was planned. And Rito was essentially looking for an excuse to do it for quite a while.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, a lot from this game that I really wasn't expecting. I mean, I didn't know what the story was at all going into it, but that's kind of the point of Gameclub was to go into something like this. So to have this big a surprise where we could talk for over an hour about it, when it's a 5-hour game, is quite the thing.
Yeah, and we could dissect, I think, individual story bits a little bit longer, but even sort of giving a little bit a top-down view, not going too deeply into scene-by-scene dissection. I mean, we still got pretty deep into this story, and it asks you a lot of questions. And I don't think it punishes you for having a different answer. Like, it doesn't... It takes a stand, but it doesn't make me feel like I would be wrong if I took the opposite viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, the only time it really came off as preachy to me was when they were in the church.
Yeah.
But I think
that makes sense, though. You go to church, you get a sermon.
Oh, you went there.
Oh. Who knows? Maybe that's what they were doing deliberately.
Maybe. They really did make the preacher an unlikable character, though, didn't they?
He was, yeah. I think that they were trying to say science good, religion bad. That's how that scene came across to me, but it was done very poorly.
Yeah. I would say that was kind of... Well, that and the opening sequence are kind of the low points.
Yeah, I agree. What was opening sequence? What was up with that, like, girl holding a boy dying
the prologue?
in the woods?
No idea.
Okay. All right. That doesn't ever come back up again.
I read it. I think that's tied into the because technically this is the second part of an overarching thing, but this is the first part of another arc. Because if I go to Fault, the prequel is coming out, which takes place 5 years before the events of Milestone One. So the story gets very confusing, doesn't it?
Yeah, but if this is a prequel, I thought that the girl was telling the dying boy the story? Or was about to tell him the story?
I do like Fault Silence of the Pendant, which is the upcoming prequel to this. Planned release date, when it is ready. It does look like they really refined the art style in this. Have you looked at it?
No, I haven't.
It looks like it's a little bit more interactive, but I can't really tell. Do I need to send you a link to it?
No, I'm looking at it right now on Steam.
Looks like they kind of polished the art style a little bit, doesn't it? Especially the background art.
Yeah. No, it looks like there's more
interactivity.
Gameplay. Yeah, interactivity to it.
Even though it's a little hard to tell exactly what's going on with it. But I guess we'll find out later, because I imagine that we'll want to continue this at some point, huh?
Yeah, I think this prequel is supposed to release this year.
Ish. If it's ready.
Well, 2019, and then Fault Milestone
the demo will release
2 Side Below.
See, it looks like there is a demo, or going to be a demo. The demo is a pre-release version. It's not reflective of the final product. You may experience issues that will not be present upon release. Music and other content is not finalized and may be subject to change. The demo will release in 3 parts. The first part is out now. Second to follow next week. I'm not sure when they put this out. And third one to release during Anime Expo. Which Anime Expo is in July.
I see.
So even the demo for the upcoming game is episodic.
They've got another game called Magna Gramura and Fairy Bell. And it looks like a chibi version. I mean, it's not the same story, but the art style is like a chibi version of that. I wonder if they're connected. I mean, it's made by the same people, Alice in Chains. Or no, sorry, Alice in Dissonance. Not Alice in Chains.
Yeah, Alice
it's a band, right? Alice in Chains. Singer.
But is it just me, or are these characters the ones that are in the prologue, though?
Oh, they might be. A boy and a girl in the woods.
It looks like...
no. I just got, like, shivers. I don't want the boy and the girl to die in the woods. That's in the cute chibi art style with the fairy.
I mean, that looks like them, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, now I'm sad. I guess I'll have to buy it and find out.
Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Oh.
Oh, I just bummed you out.
Maybe. I mean, it'd still be a beautiful story. I'm okay if a story makes me sad. I can handle that. So yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add at this point. All that's really left that I can think of is to dissect individual scenes, which I'm...
Yeah, but we already
don't
confirmed that that's going to be murder if we do that.
Touché. So yeah, do you have any final thing, or are we...
I would say that it's very rough to start, and it's definitely could have used a little bit more polish, or Or it may just be a cultural thing. That's also a severe possibility. But I will say that if you're a fan of visual novels, it is definitely worth a check out to, see if it's for you. And it often goes on sale for a pretty steep discount. And there's 2 parts out. Third part, which is a prequel, which hopefully will explain what the hell in the opening sequence, right?
Yeah.
Should be out this year. So a fair amount of content for $15, which is not too shabby, especially for the visual novel genre or medium or whatever. So yeah, I would say definitely check it out, but it's one of those that, sit down, grit your teeth, and start clicking.
Yeah.
Once you hit in the first chapter, it's a lot smoother sailing.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this game. I liked it a lot. And, I already recommended it when we kind of wrapped up before we got to spoiler stuff, but even more so having talked about it.
There's a lot here.
There's a lot here. And it is cute, and it's fun, and it's funny, but it also is very deep, and presents a lot of interesting questions to you, the reader, the viewer, whatever. And, I know games can do that, but I don't feel like this comes along too often in any genre, in any, type of game-related thing. Like, this is more rare than common, and I think that it's worth it if you are even remotely interested in this type of gameplay or storytelling medium. If you hate visual novels, I don't think this is enough to change your mind.
Yeah, I will say that it's
aspect.
Not overly anime. I mean, you do have the huge eyes, but they're in proper proportion. And another is... Yeah. Hang on. I just noticed something about the art style.
What?
Take a look at the art style of the mana users versus the non-mana users.
Is this going to be visible on the Visual Novel database?
Yeah.
I don't quite...
the mana users are drawn a lot more of an anime art style, while the mundanes, for lack of a better term, are a lot more realistic.
The normies.
The muggles!
That makes sense, though. I do see it in the eyes now that I'm looking at it. Although Rune has got big eyes, too.
Yeah, but Rune is also robotic, so...
But when it comes to the style of dress and things, that I felt like was explained for story reasons.
Yeah, Rune is the... even humanoid Rune, if you go to Spoil Me, it shows both robotic and original. Rune is kind of the outlier there, but that also may be conducive of children that, they have bigger heads and bigger eyes in proportion to their body.
Yeah.
And also, it does mention something about the ending and makes an appearance that I just noticed.
Who makes an appearance? Where?
It makes an appearance. Make sure you hit Spoil Me in the tags.
Yeah, I'm on Spoil Me.
For me, I'm seeing a third person and makes an appearance.
Oh. Cool.
So, I was right.
Yeah. Cool. Reagan. Wait, what was... So, Selphine... Is Reagan the... Is that his name? The king?
Yeah.
Okay. Engages in fighting possession. Okay. Role: Magician, Queen Regent, Telepath.
Or the original, because... Hang on, now I gotta go...
I wonder if, because the spoiler discussion that I saw on...
Maybe
it's like he possesses her body during the first part of the path down.
No, that's not her father's name, so... that may be like grandfather or grandmother.
Or it could be a new entity that's created by the merging of her personality with...
True.
All of the previous stuff and things.
Yeah, the ending just got a lot more interesting, huh?
Yeah. I want to go start the second one even more now. I'm not going to right now, not tonight, but I wanna.
No, you're going to go play Gilded Dungeoneering.
I might, depending on how much longer we do this.
Well,
it's almost midnight.
Yeah, but first of all, we need to talk about 2 game clubs that are coming up because we have something special coming.
Indeed. So next month's game club is going to be Enter the Gungeon. We had this happen twice this year now. We both had Enter the Gungeon on our
but
list.
To be fair, we've let the list kind of get depopulated, so it becomes more and more likely as we pull things off, either because we've done them or we had a couple MMOs that's gotten deactivated, so we pulled them from the list because, well, can't play a MMO that isn't active anymore. That's not City of Heroes.
Yeah. But so we're going to be doing Enter the Gungeon for next month after having I think this is probably why we both put this on our list. Maybe we talked about it, but I forgot. But after having a visual novel, like 100% story-based game, or narrative-based, we wanted something that was more mechanics-based. So we wound up picking Enter the Gungeon.
Yeah, well, I wanted something that was not as heavy on story for the next month.
Right, which we had already discussed this and figured this out a month ago.
Yeah, this was when I was on my kick big time for tactical games, because I wanted something to, kind of scratch that itch. I was feeling it. And I was going through a bunch of mobile titles trying to figure out, okay, is there anything halfway decent here? And I eventually thought, just emulate the damn thing and go back to a game that I played a little bit but never beat, which was Final Fantasy Tactics. And as a lark, I mentioned, I'll just put Final Fantasy Tactics on my list for July because it's going to be a long month. And you lit up.
Yeah. So I've played, and this is the original PS1 version. If you happen to have an original copy, by all means, feel free to play it on your original PlayStation. But otherwise, we're going to emulate it, and feel welcome to do so. If you've never emulated a title before, feel free to contact either of us to get some help.
Yeah, it's not like anyone here has actually built an emulated console.
Yeah, there's also a million and one guides you could probably Google. I mean, if you get stuck, you could ask for help too. But bunches of people in the community, as well as both of us, have done emulation before. So,
and this will be our second foray into emulation, and hopefully it'll be better than the last time for Game Club.
Yeah. So we've each tested. I think I've tested it. Did you test it? I don't remember.
I think I loaded it up, but I hadn't gone far enough in to really test it, but it should be all right.
Yeah, so I tested it, and it seems to be working fine for me. So we'll be doing Final Fantasy Tactics, which is a bit longer. And also there's a decent amount of story in it. So, if you want to get started on it now, feel free. You'll have 2 months.
Yeah, which is why we announced it now, and was part of the design to do something that was kind of lighter, more mechanics focused.
Yeah. And then this is going to be July's Game Club.
Yep. So we have Enter the Gungeon for June and Final Fantasy Tactics for July.
And July has got 5 weeks.
Yeah, just by
5 Tuesdays.
Yeah. So
it's a long month.
Yeah. Enter the Gungeon's recording date will be on June 25th. And then Final Fantasy Tactics will be July 30th.
Mm-hmm. So, yay, Game Club.
Yeah.
Cool games. Fun games.
I hope so.
Yeah. So,
I mean, we did Shadow of the Colossus thinking it was going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it was not. Like I said, I've played Final Fantasy Tactics before. It was a long time ago.
Yeah,
I was a kid.
Yeah, so this may be another case of nostalgia. I mean, let's be honest here.
Yeah, it might be. And if it turns out that it sucks, we reserve the right to pull the plug on it and change something else out. But right now, we're both looking forward to this. So, yay games. Yay Game Club. So we have been recording for over 2.5 hours, and it is slightly past midnight. So I vote that we cover Community Corner quickly and then wrap up
Then
the show.
you go turn into a pumpkin?
Yeah.
Yeah, my voice is starting to get a little raspy.
Okay. So then we'll briskly, swiftly head over to Community Corner, which we didn't have any emails, or do we have any tweets? I don't know, we didn't have any emails. Do we have
No,
tweets?
not that, I saw.
Okay. So really all we need to talk about is Community Game Night. Obviously there was not one this week. I was house sitting for my parents, and I was back at my own home yesterday, but I still just essentially enjoyed a relaxing day because I didn't know when I was going to get back. So I hope everyone had a relaxing Memorial Day weekend if you're in the United States, and just a good weekend and a good Monday if you're not. This coming week, we are going to be taking another shot at Pandemic. Now that we have had some experience playing it and read sort of the beginner suggested rules, we're going to be using some things that make it hopefully more likely that we're going to win. No promises. But, while a huge part of Pandemic is losing and sort of the fun of losing, it does still feel good to win, especially when you're new to the game, learning the ropes. Makes you feel like you can do it. So,
no, it's Dwarf Fortress. Losing is fun.
So now that we've got a handle on the mechanics, we're going to take another stab at it and see if we can win. And we will discuss a couple of weeks out from there. I've got a couple of ideas to talk about with the group. And
that's
then
why I
you've
didn't
got,
do it.
And then we've got those games which you mentioned to me. Was it last week?
A couple weeks ago now.
A couple weeks ago? Yeah. That we can also present to the group as potential. And as always, if anyone has any suggestions for Community Game Night, feel free to drop them in Discord, shoot us a message on our respective Steam profiles, send us an email, send up a smoke signal. I don't know if either of us will catch it, but, you never know. It's worth a shot. So,
oh no,
with
the Midwest just being raining as hell and tornadoes and everything else, I think the smoke signal will get lost and everything.
Fair. That's fair. Maybe smoke signals is a bad idea. Send a carrier pigeon. Or if you're a Game of Thrones fan, send a raven.
Yeah, which if you're a Game of Thrones fan, sorry? Question mark?
If I'm not just going to go into a dissection of Season 8 of Game of Thrones, but if any listeners want to hear that, just send some stuff into the show. I could record some bonus content for a Franken episode.
Does this sound like a rant to me, or?
No, it's not a rave either. There's some good points to Season 8. There's some bad points to Season 8. And I think, just very generally, very briefly, for just a moment, that there's a lot of people on the internet expected it to be a way that it wasn't, and they flipped shit. That's a huge part of what I think is going on. Because there is some good stuff in those last 6 episodes. There's some bad stuff. And there's one consistent problem that keeps coming up, which is it was rushed. But, it's not a complete and total, disaster like the internet has made it out to be. So, it's a very brief overview. And if you want to know more, write into the show and let me know. I would be more than happy to record something about it.
Yeah, and if you wish to do that, vglpodcast@gmail.com or on the Twitter, vglpodcast.
I guess at this point, given where we're going, I'm going to say, hey, Rage, hit him with the socials.
Well, I've been Caffeine Rage. You can find me on the YouTubes, Gaming with Caffeine Rage. You can find me on Twitter, Gaming with CR, or you can find me on Twitter, Gaming with CR. Sorry, my voice is about gone, and I'm a little loopy. But I'm not having a stroke like you.
I was going to say,
Twitter,
oh no, get spread.
Twitter is Gaming with CR, and maybe someday I'll be back on Twitch, Caffeine_Rage. And you've been?
I have been Gaming Psychologist. You can follow me on the YouTubes by searching for Gaming Psychologist. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at JMA4707. I engaged in a bit of discussion today about trans culture with a trans friend that I have, and there were some silly jokes and a couple of serious back and forth tweets. So, you never know what I'm going to talk about. I might just yell about politics. I might talk about video games.
In a while, I'm going to have to poke you on that.
And I might just be talking, or I might just talk about stuff in my own life.
Yeah, did you hear that that inside the president's cup was just nothing but McDonald's French fries?
That makes sense. I mean, and honestly, given all of the shit that's going on, that's kind of the least of my worries. I'm kind of envious of that cup full of French fries. If I eat those, I risk going into a coma. So, yay, chronic conditions. But anyways, enough about my health. The final place you can contact me is on Steam. If you want to be my friend, send a friend request to jarthur470. It's back. jarthur4707. I accept all friend requests and like to talk to lovely people.
And if you wish to let them know exactly what episode of the podcast you're coming from, the password for this week is Measure of a Man.
Nice.
The Measure of a Man. And also a very good Star Trek episode, which is kind of poignant for this.
Mm-hmm. There's some big parallels to that in there.
Which is why I chose the phrase plus, well, you did mention Data before, and that's the episode that they threatened to disassemble them.
Yep.
That's another series that, or another medium. Well, I guess sci-fi is part of this as well, where they could take a look at social issues without coming across as preachy by having parallels. Like back in the 80s, they talked about gender identification on an episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, they did that in a few episodes. There was one where they had the person who had 3 genders.
Well, I was talking about
the third gender,
the asexual species that pretty much identified as a mixture of male and female, and one that wanted to be pretty much exclusively female and bone Riker. Or have Riker bone her. Yep.
Actually, I'm thinking of an episode of Star Trek Enterprise, but they had a species that had 3 genders. Very, very similar in concept, though, to the
see, I didn't watch too much Enterprise,
episode.
And we don't talk about Discovery.
I haven't seen Discovery. And then there's also, what's the one where they go to like a reverse planet where that women are in charge. Or the female sex is in charge of everything, and male sex is the one that is more subservient, more, essentially they gender swapped culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting episode because all the ladies love, again, they want to bone Riker because he's like this very strong
It's
man,
the beard.
And they're like,
it's the beard.
This is, to be fair, I want to bone Riker, and it is the beard. He looks weird without a beard.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a reason why the term growing the beard became a thing.
Growing the beard, jumping the shark. What else is there? But anyways, yeah. That was there's a good pull there for the password.
Yeah, I thought you would enjoy it. And something else you may enjoy is, once again, you could reach us via email, vglpodcast@gmail.com, with your letters, voicemails, gaming-related topics, or just tweet them to us, vglpodcast. Our lovely, lovely patrons have helped pay for, the procedure that's going to fix Jared's stroke over the course of the next week. You could contribute to his health fund. The podcast fund. Patreon.com/VGLpodcast. And our lovely patrons have made our Podbean account possible, which is hosting this. VGLpodcast.podbean.com. Let's host the RSS feed, the show notes, links to all our stuff online, and yes, I do mean all of it. Even the stuff you don't want to see. Or you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, or your podcatcher of choice. Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kevin McLeod. You can find his work at Incompetech.com. And
as always, as his lovely music starts to roll across my voice, bye now.
See you next time.